It is Thursday afternoon. Thank you for joining us here for Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right across from me is the super fabulous producer, Carlene Bragg.
Hi, Nick.
How are you doing today?
I'm good.
It
I'm
is
good.
Thursday. We're practically.
We're so close.
It's practically the weekend. Y'all.
We're so close to the
We're
weekend.
practically the weekend.
We've been looking forward to it since Tuesday,
Right.
even though we had off on Monday.
I know, right? Those short weeks are tricky because
Yeah.
short weeks, you think you go into it and you're like, man, this is a short week. A week is gonna fly by, and it
It didn't.
doesn't. It doesn't.
It didn't.
It didn't. It didn't. But it's been a great week so far. A lot of things happening in the news
Yes.
world, per usual. Still a lot of things happening today. I'm looking at all the live shots and monitors and everything that's going on. So we'll get to that in a moment. We have I love to tease through live interviews because we have a special guest coming in here talking about diversity in sports. There's a panel that happened yesterday, but also today it continues later this afternoon, targeting high school students, college kids. Yeah, so that will be a great conversation. We'll have that in the 1 o'clock hour. But first, let's talk about the weather, because the weather has just been a trick bag of things this week. Look at this. This is Carowinds.
This is Carowinds.
A shaky shot of I saw the camera shaking a little bit.
It was shaking a little.
Yeah, it's. I haven't got a chance to go outside, but one of our reporters, Bria Smith, she just told me it was muggy outside. It's really muggy.
Yeah.
So it's one of those cloudy, muggy days. The sun popped out for a little bit today.
A little bit.
I was able to wear my shades into work. I love.
And now you don't need shades.
Don't need my shades. I call them my good luck shades because I know.
Why are they good luck, Nick?
I don't know. I just feel like it's always.
You feel lucky in them?
I feel like when the sun is out is it's a great day regardless, but it's just an even better day when the sun's out. That's why I call them.
It's a cherry on top.
It's cherry on top. There's somebody. There's not anybody going up on their roller coaster. It looks like they're doing a test.
I think they're doing testing.
Okay.
I don't think it's open on Thursday. I think it's only weekend.
I'm not sure.
Friday and the weekend. We'll take a look. You know what? I'm gonna have to Google again. This is the Gastonia Ghost Peppers all over again.
I just noticed that the ride something the coasters.
It's moving.
Yeah, so it's moving. But yeah, so let's get a check of the forecast. We are weather alert tomorrow with some strong thunderstorms in the afternoon into the evening. But let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. We've got the chance for some strong storms to our south today, but a bigger chance of severe weather for most of the Carolinas going into Friday. So let's get right to it. We're going to show you the wide view first, and we can see the systems that are going to be impacting us over the next 48 hours. Here's the system that will be passing mainly into South Carolina tonight. So South Carolina followers, you're going to have the risk for some strong storms this afternoon and this evening. North Carolina, less of a risk. Friday, this is the system that moves across the entire area, and everybody gets a chance for seeing some severe weather with that system. So let's break down the risk for severe storms. So here's the risk for severe weather today, Thursday the 29th. You can see across Texas, and then in the Carolinas, we'll zoom in on the area that we're most concerned about. It's down here in the low country from the Midlands down to southeast Georgia. There's a low chance up here, but I'll be honest with you, it looks like good old-fashioned storms. Risk of a severe storm there is 5% or less, so not a really big deal. So not overly concerned. Now tomorrow, different story. Look at the risk. We've got a big area of medium. This is what we're going to see. We're going to see a line of storms in the morning over here in Tennessee, marching to the east. So in the afternoon and early evening, we are going to see the risk for some strong and severe storms as that moves in. And then on Saturday, that system pushes off to the north and east, and we see a low risk going up into the Tidewater region. So it really can focusing here on the risk for severe weather on Friday. That's why today we want you to stay weather aware. Let's show you the future cast, and I'll show you some of the parameters coming together. So we start with today's risk of strong storms. We're dry this morning. We had a few pop-up showers, but you'll see as we go into the afternoon, this is around 2:30. You see the storms moving in. Now, everybody will likely see some rain this evening. I'm going to stop this at 5 o'clock because I think this is the time frame most people will start to really pay attention. You can see some scattered storms in the mountains, but this is the area down here. So from Myrtle Beach to Charleston to Savannah, that's an area I'd watch for a strong storm this evening. But everybody will see at least a few scattered storms. You can see even through 10 or 11 o'clock, those moving through. Now, tomorrow, this is where things get a little bit more widespread and probably a higher risk of severe weather. We'll stop this right around after sunrise. This is about 8:30 in the morning. We'll go to about 10:30. I'm going to stop this around lunchtime. So lunchtime, The speed of the system is the key part. So there's a little wiggle room on the time of arrival. So if we have time for the atmosphere to warm up and warm, humid air to surge in from the south, this line will have a lot more fuel to be strong or severe. So at 12, if it's just entering the mountains, that is not even close to peak heating. Peak heating this time of year is around 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., really late evening, late afternoon, early evening is when we see the worst of it. So this is around 2 o'clock. Storms are moving east, and you notice these storms are getting more vigorous, and there's brighter returns, at least on the reflectivity. I'll stop this around 3 o'clock. A couple things to point out here. Looks like to the south, we definitely have some kind of bowing segment, but even in here, we could have some gusty winds and an isolated supercell. If it stays linear, it's going to be more of a straight line risk. If we see individual cells, then we worry more about a tornado risk and damaging wind. So this is 4 o'clock. You can see there's definitely bowing segments. What I mean by that is you think about a bow and arrow, the shape of a bow is like this, and then the arrow would be pushed through like that. These bowing segments are an indication that you've got strong winds. The arrow is basically the wind pushing them out. And so you know you have strong winds in there. But where they meet up sometimes, like in areas like here, up here, sometimes at the apex of the bow, you can get quick spin up tornadoes. So that's always a possibility. But you see it pushing through by 5 o'clock, and then it becomes really vigorous because this is max heating. Remember, 5 o'clock, as I said, heating of the day. So you see why central North Carolina to the Midlands might end up with the highest risk of severe weather. And this pushes east through the evening. This is 5:50, basically 6 o'clock, and then all the way to 7 o'clock in the evening starts to push off the coast, and we're out of here. Might be a trailing batch of isolated showers and storms. I'm not expecting much out of that. And by the time we get to Saturday morning, everything is gone. So let's look at that tornado parameter. Today, not much. There's not a lot going on. We go into Friday, you see during the day as that system approaches, there's not a lot of STP, or what we call significant tornado parameter. It's not really crazy high. So the tornado risk is not zero, but it's not really high either. I think this is going to be a straight line in hail risk unless the cells become individual. We'll quickly look at the helicity tracks, which show the potential for rotating storms, which mean both hail producers and possibly damaging winds and an isolated tornado. But you see, overall, there's not a ton of helicity tracks. There's a few here in eastern North Carolina on Friday and a couple down in South Carolina. But overall, that's not a ton of them for this kind of setup. If we were more worried about tornadoes, we'd see a lot more of that parameter showing up there. So what we're watching for are two lines of storms, one coming in later this afternoon, the lesser of the two. The one tomorrow, you see it blasting through here in the middle of the afternoon. And because that, on Friday, we want you to stay weather aware and alert, because potentially mid-afternoon, right now the timing does look like noon to 6 p.m. for the Western Carolinas, and probably 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for central and eastern North Carolina. So that'll give you a quick heads up. And of course, stay tuned for updates. Have your phone charged fully. Make sure you have 3 ways to get weather alerts for any warnings or watches that could be issued coming up on Friday.
And that was Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich giving us a look at the forecast and what we can expect tomorrow. Carlene, you have an update. You have an update.
Carowinds is open.
It's open.
It's open. It's open. Yeah, 10 to 7 today. The water park's not open, but the park itself is open. I was wrong.
Look, I didn't see anybody on the ride there, but it's still early.
It's still early.
It's still early. So
yeah, but it is open.
And it's still early. Carowinds is such a fun experience.
It is.
And this is not an ad for Carowinds. It's us being from the Carolinas.
Yes. This was our amusement park.
Oh, man.
This is the one that we had
every summer as a kid. We went to Carowinds. So yeah, it's I'd say that to say great day to be out there. Little muggy, but look, as a kid, it was.
The sun's not beating down on you though, so I'm like, that's kind of like. I mean, and I love sunshine. Don't get me wrong, but like, it takes it out of you all day at the park. You're riding rides and you're whooshing around. Like that sun will.
It'll take a toll on the parents.
It'll take a toll on the parents. That's probably more.
So, well, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Well, let me pop back on the camera. So, let's shift gears now. We'll stay here in the Carolinas. So we want to get to a story, a press conference that happened recently, yesterday actually. So let me set the scene for you. So a South Carolina museum gets some pictures from Harvard University. So a 15-year legal battle comes to an end. Harvard University now surrendering photographs believed to be the earliest taking of enslaved people to South Carolina's International African American Museum. It's part of a settlement with one of the subject's descendants. The images of Renty Taylor and his daughter, Delia, were taken 175 years ago by a Harvard scientist whose theories on race were used to justify slavery in the U.S. Now, Renty's great-great-great-granddaughter sued Harvard over the images. The family held a press conference. Let's listen into that press conference.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us on this historic occasion in terms of this landmark case and what it says and what it stands for. There are cases, and then there are cases. The second use of the word cases is the rarest of cases. The cases that elevate all of us, that remind us of our strengths and our weaknesses, and that remind us that confronting the truth is the only safety we have if we are going to survive and move forward. And that burying the truth never pays. It never pays, because the ghosts of buried truth will haunt institutions in America forever, including Harvard. We have projected here images that you've all now seen. These are the images of warriors, of survivors, of fighters. These are the images of Renty and his daughter Delia. And we are talking about events that date back 175 years. When was the last case you heard or read about concerning events that took place 175 years ago? 175 years ago, these human beings, Renty and his daughter Delia, who were enslaved on a plantation in Columbia, South Carolina, were curated like subjects of animal studies. They were dragged to a plush studio in Columbia. There, Renty and Delia and 5 other human beings were stripped. They were humiliated. They were made to take prolonged poses against metal scaffolding that held them in place just long enough to be captured by the light needed to burnish images on a silver plate. There were no iPhones. This was a torturous process. The father's defiance is not the rigors of slavery, as Harvard has taught, in its half-truth and its misdirection and its erasure of Renty and Delia for over a century. This is the image of a father who is trying to show strength as he is being tortured and as his teenage daughter, likely, is standing bare-chested, surrounded by white men who think she is an animal. On behalf of what and who? On behalf of not just any scientist, but the scientist that Harvard chose out of all the scientists in the world, the scientist that Harvard chose and elevated to the throne and power of science in the mid-1800s. Harvard made the scientist Louis Agassiz famous in life. They underwrote this torture, the so-called scientific experiment that Agassiz was promoting, with great purchase in the North, because after all, he was a Harvard man. And Harvard is about veritas, truth, and science. He was promoting it, and it was well received in the North and South, as were his crackpot theories that were not simply dismissible, but were racist to its core and influential in the founding and development of eugenics and other toxic ideologies that continue to plague us. But for Harvard, he was a hero. And the story that Harvard promoted and told was half true. It was a story of slavery, and that story must never not be told. It cannot, or we cannot erase history and erase slavery, because it informs us, and it only can we, if we recognize this history, can we possibly advance. But it was a half history when it came to these images. What did Harvard not tell? What story did it not tell? It didn't tell that it underwrote this torture in the scientific experiment. In fact, it also promoted Agassiz long after his death, up to and including the day we filed this lawsuit. Excuse me, the day Tamara Lanier filed this lawsuit. Amen. Because, you know, there's one thing that gets in the way of institutional power and history being written by the winners. And in this end, it is the fortitude of a single person sometimes. Harvard, for good reason, did not want this side of the story told. Would you? Does it shine a favorable light on Harvard? And maybe it was not intentionally evil to do that. You can't blame them for trying to protect their brand. And when they show these images, you know, one thing is, there wasn't even an asterisk when they show these to say how horrible slavery is. No asterisk to say that, hey, by the way, Harvard, we promoted and underwrote the creation of these images of themselves, and we were complicit in these crimes. Not even an asterisk as they went about shedding truth, alleged truth on slavery. But again, never underestimate the great, how many greats? 3 greats. Never underestimate the great granddaughter of an enslaved father, his daughter being abused by a Harvard scientist. And especially when that great granddaughter makes a promise to her mother when she is dying, that she will see to it to set the record straight, that she will see truth and shine a light on it. We can handle it. We can handle it. Harvard can handle it. But I gotta say, I was a little bit worried about the chances here. Until I spent some time with this extraordinary woman, Tamara Lanier, and my incredible colleague and friend, Benjamin Crump. Both of us are so honored to serve Tammy in this incredible case. And the attitude continued for a long time after the filing of this case. When we filed this case, the president of Harvard at the time was President Bacow, and he sort of boasted that, well, we've got the law on our side. Well, of course he has the law on the side. The law was written by Harvard men, like him. Now, it was written, and we have the vestiges of those laws. It was not written for the descendants of enslaved people who themselves had no right. So of course they had the law on their side. And Harvard continued in their submissions in this case to call themselves, without apparent any sense of irony, the, quote, ethical stewards of history. And that phrase kept repeating itself. We are the ethical stewards of history. We are not here today to bash Harvard because, you know, Harvard is itself under the microscope right now simply for trying to tell stories of history that we all know are true. And we should say that we firmly support Harvard's side of the epic battle they're in right now. But that doesn't mean that they are perfect. And that doesn't mean that they don't have the obligation to tell a full history, even one that sheds poorly on their own veritas. We all won a victory here by simply getting to hear the story of this remarkable woman. It was the only thing that we needed to get this case off the ground. How could we turn our backs to this story of survival? But we did more than that, thanks to our, more than we used, thanks to our rock, we were able to change the law. We were able to change the law. Of course, Harvard's first move was to throw this case out. Of course they wanted to throw it out, wouldn't you? They didn't want to confront the truth, but they didn't realize that she was about setting the record straight. And you may not know this, but because of Tamara Lanier in this case, there is now a legal duty on the part of American institutions of higher learning to treat descendants of indigenous populations, including those that are enslaved, with dignity and respect. And it is a shame that Harvard didn't know to do that anyway, that they had to be told they had an obligation. Because the truth is, if they treated Tamara Lanier with dignity and respect, in the years that she was trying to plead with them to look at her lineage, her documentation, to discuss the images of Renti and Delia, there never would have been a lawsuit, and we wouldn't be standing here. That's what happens when you try to avoid the truth, when you try to bury the truth. That's what happens. Nothing good happens from that. So at this point, I'd like to turn this over to Ben Crump. There's a reason I go before Ben. I'm not stupid. I'm the smartest guy, but my dear friend and colleague, Benjamin Crump.
Thank you so much to my learned co-counsel, a great guy, Attorney Josh Koskoff, and to Attorney Nabiha Shear, Attorney Preston Tisdale, Attorney Katie Ma Hasman, Attorney Kerry Riley, and to Tally Calico, and all the great lawyers who made up this legal team to achieve this historic settlement and this historic victory. But the person I think we should thank most for this landmark milestone in American jurisprudence is Papa Renti's great-great-great-granddaughter, Tammy Lanier. Without her, Josh, we would not have been able to celebrate this historical settlement, this historical victory. And we think not only Harvard is the better for it, we think not only Papa Renti's family is the better for it, we think not only America is the better for it, we think people all around the world is better for this historic settlement. So Tammy, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge Suzanne and all of her siblings, the descendants of the Harvard professor Louis Agassiz, who was the proponent of these daguerreotypes being taken to prove his racist theories. And when I see her standing beside Miss Tamara Lanier, it gives me hope. It just gives me hope. I mean, that's what this pitch is. It's just hope for a better America, a better world, when we have the descendants of Papa Renti and the descendants of Louis Agassiz coming together saying, we're better than this, America. We're better than this. And so what Attorney Koskoff and our legal team did in the courtroom, you all are doing so much better in the court of public opinion to set the record straight for the world, to say that Papa Renti and his daughter Delia was not illiterate, they were not irrelevant, they were not illegitimate, they were human beings worthy of dignity and respect. And this lawsuit and this result was precedent setting in so many ways in the defense of humanity for black people all over the world, especially at this time. It is so critically important when we think about this epidemic of white supremacy that has resurfaced and reared its ugly head, that we know that there are champions for equal justice that stand up to the enemies of equality. And I'm thankful to Harvard. I wore my crimson tie to say thank you, Harvard, for doing the right thing. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And so I think Attorney Koskoff said most of what needed to be said, but I will say this in conclusion. I think about the first day I met Miss Lanier, and she talked about how important this case was for Papa Renti. She said this will have significant impact on any of the cases that you've done because it affects all of us, all descendants of enslaved people. My mama, your daddy, my daddy, our children yet unborn. She said this case will have that kind of impact. And I must admit, like Attorney Koskoff said earlier, it was a bit daunting. I mean, we're only talking about a 150-year-old case, a 175-year-old case. And so I remember being on the set of the movie Marshall, where I with Trayvon Parents, we had a cameo role, and fate, it was divine intervention, I believe, that one of the screenwriters on the movie Marshall was Mike Koskoff, Josh's father. And I never forget the late great Chadwick Boseman, who portrayed Thurgood Marshall. Many know him as the title character in Black Panther movie. But he was sitting there trying to get it right. He wanted to know about the challenges of being a civil rights lawyer and facing racism and bigotry when you come into a town. And so we were talking, and Mike was talking about it, and so we were having a little bond there. And then I thought about Papa Renti and knowing Mike's history and gravitas and fighting for equal justice under the law. I started talking to him about this case. Now, he was just like me. He was like a 150-year-old case. We're bringing, and what was so fascinating was Chadwick's interest in what I was talking about, and Mike, and you know, it's kind of surreal that both of them are gone now. And it seemed like only yesterday, Miss Lanier, that you convinced me, and I did my best to convince Mike, but again, it was you who convinced Mike Koskoff And then the acorn didn't fall far from the tree. He convinced Josh and their firm to take on this challenge with us. And we took on this case. And I remember how hard we fought to try to get it right. The genealogy, the people, everything Miss Lanier had did, the deathbed promise to her mother, to tell the story of Papa Renton, to set the record straight, and then to go in the lower court and be dismissed. But to know that she had perseverance, and that Josh and I, because unfortunately Michael Koskoff died the day we filed the lawsuit, but he's here with us. And for Josh to pick up the torch and to say we're going to continue to fight, and then we appealed. And we serve a guy who sits high and looks low, and the Massachusetts Supreme Court granted us cert. And we went and argued, and it's like it was yesterday, telling the Massachusetts Supreme Court, thank you all for hearing this matter. I stand before you as not just a lawyer, because of something courageous that your descendants 200 years ago did in this court, in the Massachusetts Supreme Court, for having the courage to change the course of human history. I stand here not just as a civil rights lawyer, but I stand here as a black man, as a free black man, because you all in this court 200 years ago had the courage to change human history when you became the first state in the United States of America to judicially outlaw slavery. And so we just are coming 200 years later to see if you all have the courage of your predecessors in this court to finally free Papa Renty and Delia from the bondages of Harvard and finally let them be free. And so that's why this day is so historic. That's why this settlement is so historic. That's why we consider this such a historic victory, because Tamara Lanier is our woman in gold. She's the person who fought against. We could not free her Papa Renty and Delia, but she persevered. And because of her perseverance, we are advocating and we believe that these daguerreotypes, these earliest known photographs still in existence, will be returned preferably to the state of South Carolina from whence Papa Renty and Delia came. And so hopefully we can come to a mutual agreement with Harvard that we can make that happen. And Papa Renty and Delia, his daughter, can finally be at their resting place. It is all because of you, Ms. Lanier. It is all because of you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I have a prepared statement that I'm going to read. Today marks a turning point in American history. This landmark settlement is not just a victory for my family, it's a victory for every descendant who has carried the weight of a stolen past and dared to demand it back. To quote the late Dr. Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And just to piggyback off what Josh was saying, another quote is, truth crushed to the earth will rise again. Amen. This is a moment in history when the sons and daughters of stolen ancestors can stand with pride and rightfully proclaim a victory for reparations. After 15 long years of struggle and strife, Harvard has at long last agreed to relinquish all 15 daguerreotypes in its possession, including the stolen images of my enslaved ancestors, Renty and Delia. This pilfered property, images taken without dignity or consent, and used to promote a racist pseudoscience, will now be repatriated to a home where their stories can be told and their humanity can be restored. The Lanier v. Harvard lawsuit is historic, not only for what it sought, but what it represents. A moral reckoning. A landmark lawsuit that dared to demand.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, you're watching a press conference from this week, yesterday actually, at South Carolina Museum. It's a long story, but I'll give you the condensed version. But the South Carolina Museum, actually the International African American Museum, receiving photos from Harvard after a 15-year battle over Harvard University, surrendering the photos believed to be the earliest taken of enslaved people to, again, South Carolina's International African American Museum. That's that press conference happening. On the top right, we're awaiting the White House briefing that is supposed to start at any moment now. And below that, this is a live look outside of the federal courthouse in New York City as the Sean Diddy Combs trial continues. All right, so let's come back home. We want to check in on the weather again. I was gonna bring up Diet Coke Gate, but we got to get to the bottom of this. Let's bring in meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. Brittany Van Voorhees is an avid lover of Diet Coke.
Yep, it is true.
But
as a mine.
Carlene is too.
Yes. Mm-hmm. To the point where part of our love language, since as the viewers at home probably don't know, Carlene's one of my best friends, but our part of our love language is bringing Diet Cokes to each other.
No. Not letting you get off that easy.
Oh, no, I'll bring it up. So
yesterday,
before I left work, I left a Diet Coke in the fridge and was thinking to myself, because I was going to the gym, I said, why would I drink it now when I have to go work out? I said, I'll save it for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So today when I went in, there was a Diet Coke in there, and I put 2 warm room temperature ones in there, took that one, and it was on the shelf. But then 30 minutes later, Carlene comes in. She's like, hey, did you take my Diet Coke? And I'm like, I don't think so, because I left one there yesterday. So I told her, I was like, take one of the ones I put in there. I'm so sorry. But then I went back in to see if there was another one, and maybe I grabbed the wrong one, and there was one gone. So if I took Carlene's, that meant someone took mine yesterday. That's the Diet Coke gate, but it's
that's
fine.
That's the Diet Coke gate. I'm blaming Brittany for all of this,
and that's good. But
some inside tea here at Live Impact News, but we love Diet Coke, and somebody here at WCNC Charlotte swiped a Coke.
They swiped a Coke.
Yeah, and maybe someone took theirs, and it was a continuing thing where someone thought it was theirs.
But we are going to get to the bottom of this.
I was trying to hold somebody accountable. I was trying to hold Brittany accountable, but it didn't work. It didn't work.
No, I said you opened up a mystery. Yeah, now it's a mystery.
And what's funny is that, like, obviously, you know, once you hit over 30, you just got to be on. Carlene was like, was it you? And I said, maybe. I'm actually not sure. I said, but I did have one yesterday. So I'm not gonna say it couldn't have been.
Yeah.
We'll get to the bottom of this case at some point. But in the meantime,
we will Nancy Drew it and get back to it.
Let's talk about the weather. So we had a live look outside of Carowinds. I was told it's very muggy outside. We have more live pictures. Yeah. Oh man!
Look at that.
Boom. So it is muggy as we approach the start of meteorological summer, which is on Sunday, June 1st. Hard to believe. The humidity is going to increase, but in this case, the humidity is increasing because of an approaching storm system. So you're seeing more clouds out there today. Yes, here and there will be some sunshine, but I would expect for today and tomorrow to see more clouds than sun. And the big story looking ahead mainly to tomorrow is storms. So we have a storm system approaching from the south and west. You can see this big swath of rain moving through parts of Alabama and Georgia now. If you've seen, I know you guys always show these on Live Impact News as well. You might have seen on WCNC Charlotte earlier. There was massive, insane storms that moved through parts of Texas last night, over baseball-sized hail in Austin. Lots of reports of significant wind damage there. So essentially a piece of that storm system is coming here. It will not be as strong by the time it gets here, but we are going to see storms associated with multiple rounds of storms next 24 to 36 hours. So here's right now, we see clouds. There's a little bit of light rain falling, but the main story comes tomorrow. There's a chance to see a few isolated strong storms later today, but this will mainly be in South Carolina. Tomorrow, though, this risk shifts to most of the Charlotte metro area. Now, a little thing to remember here about the low versus medium risk is that a low risk is less than 2% that you'll see a strong storm. That goes up to about 15% once you start to get into the orange. So when you hear us talk about weather aware, weather alert, an alert day is more so a medium risk versus, we're always kind of under a low risk for strong storms, especially once we hit the summertime. I did bump this time frame up just about an hour from what Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich had last night, which was 2 to 8, just because it does look like storms could arrive a little bit earlier for mountain communities. Of course, this is a normal thing. We adjust the forecasts all the time, when it comes to timing. But again, 1 to 7, I think for most of our area. Gusty winds, large hail is the biggest impact. There is a low risk for a quick spin up tornado, but again, it's a low risk. So this is more of a gusty wind, large hail scenario, 1 and 2, with the tornado risk being 3. Best thing to do is always stay weather aware, stay updated on our website, our WCNC Plus, of course, our WCNC Charlotte News app. One thing I will remind people of is that there is a delay when it comes to streaming. This is not something that you can control. This is just how the internet works and streaming works. So just be aware that if there's ever a situation in which we have a tornado risk, you need to be extra alert, because we will give you more of a leeway even before potentially a tornado warning were to be issued, just because of that lag from, and of course the National Weather Service sometimes won't issue a tornado warning, for whatever reason. But we of course will always be a little bit more sensitive to that, especially knowing that there is that streaming lag. So again, damaging winds in excess of 60 miles an hour, number 1. Large hail, which is classified as anything over 1/4 of an inch, that's number 2, and then that tornado risk is very low. So here's kind of a time frame here. Again, this afternoon, most of that risk is going to be in South Carolina. A few isolated storms there south of Charlotte, but it's mainly along and south of the I-85 corridor. Then we'll see some light rain heading into the overnight hours. But tomorrow, right around lunchtime, like clockwork, 12 o'clock, we'll start to see those storms moving into the mountains. Again, you can see them approaching the Charlotte metro closer to about 2, and then we'll watch these off and on storms again from about 1 o'clock to 7 before they're pushing out of here pretty quickly by the evening hours. So it's that 1 to 7 o'clock time frame that we're mainly watching again for severe storms. We'll go over again that risk once again. Winds first, then hail, then tornado. Even though the ground is very saturated, we're not really super worried about a flooding risk just because these storms are moving pretty quickly, so that risk is not as present. I wanted to throw on the significant tornado parameter. Essentially, this is something that tracks wind shear, different changes in wind speed and direction as we go high up in the atmosphere, and kind of show the timing of when it will be highest. Again, mountains right around 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock that's moving into the metro, and then here's 7, and then it pushes out of here. So again, that's a big reason why we're watching tomorrow, again, as a day to stay weather aware. This is an afternoon event, so 10 o'clock you're good, 11 o'clock you're good. Again, it's anything after 12, so some strong to severe thunderstorms. And then we actually have drier conditions heading into the weekend, which will be really, really nice change. We're back in the low 80s, really, really nice weather, only a 20% chance of rain. And then June kind of comes roaring back with the warmth, mid to upper 80s by the middle part of next week. But something we are still not seeing in that 7 to 10 day forecast next year event is a 90-degree day. Our normal 90-degree day in Charlotte comes right around mid-May. We are still chasing it. We got close a few times, but so far the 90s are staying away, even though meteorological summer begins on Sunday.
I can deal with that. I know you
can.
It's a lovely forecast right there. You just have to get past Friday.
Yeah. Lovely for Saturday and Sunday for sure.
Yeah. And I'll be out there. I guess this is not selfishly, but the weather it'll feel great volunteering with the United Way.
I was about to say you and Jane have your big United Way thing this weekend.
So I'm looking forward to going out there, meeting the people, but also looking forward to the great weather.
Dare I say it'll even feel a little drier.
I love that. That is music to my ears.
Yeah. Wear your sunscreen.
I always do. And we got to get to the bottom of Diet Coke Gate. Yeah. But we'll get to that another time.
We'll get there.
Another time, another place.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. All right, Brittany Van Voorhees, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Nick.
Yeah.
Great being with you, as always.
As always. All right. All right, so we'll shift gears now. Let's go to Washington, D.C., where Treasury Secretary Bessent is chair of a public meeting of the Financial Literacy and Education Commission. That meeting is going on right now as we speak. Let's take a listen in.
Sound and cost efficient. Everyone in the financial ecosystem, including a lot of the financial educators here today, should carefully monitor the rapidly changing financial marketplace and update financial education strategies accordingly. For example, in 2023, almost 5% of all households owned or used cryptocurrency, with more than 9 in 10 of those holding it as an investment. Given the level of interest, expanding financial literacy resources to address digital asset investments may be quite useful and helpful. Financial educators and asset building organizations can consider how to leverage interest in investing in digital assets to help consumers consider opportunities to engage in this evolving product. Digital asset investors may be first-time investors, so I think it's going to be useful to draw upon other investor education efforts to help these new investors succeed. I indeed look forward to hearing from FLEC members and panelists on this topic today. The OCC is pleased to work with our colleagues in the FLEC to highlight innovative and effective financial education resources to promote sustained financial well-being for all of America's citizens. Thank you to the Treasury Department and again to Secretary Bessent and Deputy Secretary Falklander for this wonderful opportunity to address this august body. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kyle.
We want to shift to the White House briefing that is now underway, just started. That is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Let's take a listen in.
$1 trillion. Everybody agrees this is unacceptable. President Trump is delivering on his promise to fix this problem, and he has taken a long overdue and much needed bold stance for American workers after decades of our manufacturing base being hollowed out. The president's rationale for imposing these powerful tariffs was legally sound and grounded in common sense. President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. 3 judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him. These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security. Congress had created the National Emergency Act to provide the congressional framework to strike down improper IEEPA use. And any questions over whether President Trump improperly imposed these IEEPA tariffs were already adjudicated in Congress following Liberation Day. Congress firmly rejected an effort led by Senator Rand Paul and Democrats to terminate the president's reciprocal tariffs. The courts should have no role here. There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges. President Trump is in the process of rebalancing America's trading agreements with the entire world, bringing tens of billions of dollars in tariff revenues to our country, and finally ending the United States of America from being ripped off. These judges are threatening to undermine the credibility of the United States on the world stage. The administration has already filed an emergency motion for a stay pending appeal and an immediate administrative stay to strike down this egregious decision. But ultimately, the Supreme Court must put an end to this for the sake of our Constitution and our country. With Congress returning next week, it's critical that Senate Republicans maintain the momentum and quickly pass the One Big Beautiful Bill. The One Big Beautiful Bill will truly make America safe and prosperous. The One Big Beautiful Bill includes the largest border security investment ever. That's why the law enforcement groups are lining up to encourage its swift passage. The National Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union in the country, just endorsed key provisions of the bill. The FOP president announced their strong support, saying the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is more than legislation. It is a promise kept to the public safety officers across the country and a bold step toward an economy that respects, rewards, and uplifts the people who keep it safe. And the National Border Patrol Council, which represents nearly 20,000 Border Patrol agents, hailed the legislation as well. The group's president said this legislation provides a once-in-a-generation investment in the border security of our great country and will make America safer. The One Big Beautiful Bill will guarantee we can permanently have the safest, strongest, and most secure immigration system in American history. I also want to take the opportunity to debunk some false claims that have been circulating in the press about this bill. The blatantly wrong claim that the One Big Beautiful Bill increases the deficit is based on the Congressional Budget Office and other scorekeepers who use shoddy assumptions and have historically been terrible at forecasting across Democrat and Republican administrations alike. For example, just before Congress enacted the original Trump tax cuts at the end of 2017, the same CBO projected that growth would average a mere 1.9% over the next 10 years. However, by 2019, actual growth had surged to 3.4% once the Trump tax cuts went into effect, exceeding the CBO forecast by nearly 2 full percentage points. The CBO's latest forecast makes the same anemic growth assumptions as they did in 2017, missing the impact of the One Big Beautiful Bill. The CBO assumes long-term GDP growth of an anemic 1.8%, and that is absurd. The American economy is going to boom like never before after the One Big Beautiful Bill is passed. The largest middle-class tax cut in history, massive deregulation, and the most aggressive domestic energy exploration ever will fuel small businesses, further boost private investment, increase workers' wages, and supercharge economic growth. The Council of Economic Advisors has factored in the effects of all these pro-growth policies and estimated in their own analysis that growth will average 3% in the long run after the One Big Beautiful Bill is passed, which is nearly double the ridiculous CBO projection. This higher growth would result in $4.1 trillion in additional revenue over the next 10 years. Between the common sense spending reforms contained in the One Big Beautiful Bill and the robust economic growth that will be generated as a result of it, there will be no increase to the deficit. The same analysis from the CEA shows just how this historic package will unleash prosperity and ignite a blue-collar boom across America. But if the radical Democrats get their way and the One Big Beautiful Bill does not pass, Americans will face a whopping $4 trillion tax hike. This is unacceptable to President Trump. President Trump will not allow Democrats to massively raise Americans' taxes. Senate Republicans must get this bill passed. Failure is not an option. The American people are counting on Republicans to deliver. In other news, despite all the doom casting from the media, Americans are growing more and more optimistic about the economy under this president. Consumer confidence surged in May with the biggest monthly jump in 4 years, smashing expectations. According to the release from the Consumer Confidence Index, the increase in confidence was broad-based across all age groups, income groups, and political affiliations. Our country is clearly heading in the right direction under President Trump's bold leadership. For the first time in history of Rasmussen polling, a majority of Americans believe the country is on the right track. It's unsurprising because the president is fulfilling the promises he made to the American people. Here in our new media seat today, we have the editor-in-chief of The Federalist, Molly Hemingway. The Federalist is led by Molly and Sean Davis and provides fearless journalism and coverage of politics and culture to millions of readers all over the world. Thank you for being here, Molly, and why don't you please kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
In the first Trump administration, there was an effort to stymie the agenda of Trump through the Russia collusion hoax perpetuated by many people in the media, including some people seated here, or the media outlets they represent, and other Democrats as well. The second Trump administration, to reference what you said at the beginning, seems to be subject to an effort to stymie the agenda using rogue lower court judges. You mentioned that the Supreme Court could and should do something to rein in these lower court judges. Also, Congress could do something about it, but they don't seem terribly interested in it. It also seems there's not much of an actual coordinated effort from this White House to take and tackle this effort from judges, Democrats and other people using these judges to stymie the agenda. Is there an actual effort by this White House to tackle this issue in a comprehensive way? And if so, what is it?
There is an effort by this administration to tackle these rogue judges and the injunctions and the blockades that we have faced in our broken judicial system in every case. I mean, we have seen time and time again these lower district court judges ruling against this administration in the president's basic executive authority and powers. And this administration is fighting every single one of those battles in court, including already the block that came down from the tariff court, the IEPA court last night. And as on my way out here to the briefing room, I understand that there was another district court judge right here in Washington, D.C. who ruled against the president's tariff power. And I will get to the heart of your question, and I'm glad that we are addressing this in the room today, because nationwide injunctions ordered against the first Trump administration, Trump 1.0, account for more than half of the injunctions issued in this country since 1963. And President Trump had more injunctions in one full month of office in February than Joe Biden had in 3 years. And let me roll through some of these radical injunctions to paint the picture for the American people at home. These are not just talking points. These are real judges in the court of law who are trying to block the president's power and the policies that he was elected to enact. For example, a court ordered the Trump administration to return already deported terrorist aliens back to the United States. A court has ruled the Trump administration can't even temporarily pause our refugee programs. Courts prohibited the Trump administration from eliminating federal funding for child transgender surgery and mutilation, a practice that the American people overwhelmingly reject. A court also held that the Trump administration could not ban people experiencing gender dysphoria or mental health issues from serving in the military. Ridiculous. Courts prohibited the removal of transgender women from women's prisons despite potential physical harm to real women in those prisons, biological women. A Northern District of California judge issued an absurd ruling that the president cannot fire people within the executive branch without Congress passing a bill, even though Congress has expressly authorized the president through the Office of Personnel Management to authorize reductions in force across agencies. A court also ordered the Trump administration to rehire thousands of already fired employees in several cases. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration from defunding the Department of Education, another signature campaign promise that this president has the power to implement. Courts ordered the Trump administration could not eliminate funding for illegal DEI programs, hence the word illegal. These are illegal programs to begin with, and now the courts are trying to say this president can't roll them back. And a district court judge prohibited the president from issuing any categorical funding freezes. And then another court ordered on top of that the administration makes $2 billion of payments in 36 hours. These are just a few of the ridiculous orders that we have seen from lower district court judges every day, and we hope that the Supreme Court will weigh in and rein them in.
But White House advisor Stephen Miller says it's judicial tyranny. Some people are calling it a judicial coup. You're saying you're responding to each and every one of these actions, efforts by these judges to delay or thwart the implementation of the agenda. But is there going to be anything more than that, or is it just going to let this operation continue, even though it could delay everything for years until the presidency is over?
The administration is operating under the directive given to from the president that we need to comply with the court's orders. He's made that very clear, but we're going to fight them in court, and we're going to win on the merits of these cases because we know we are acting within the president's legal and executive authorities. And thanks for being here. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. Question on tariffs, but first actually some foreign policy news, some breaking news. Some local Israeli media is reporting that Prime Minister Netanyahu told hostage families that he's accepted a 60-day truce offer. So can you confirm, have Israel and Hamas agreed to a truce?
I can confirm that Special Envoy Witkoff and the president submitted a ceasefire proposal to Hamas that Israel backed and supported. Israel signed off on this proposal before it was sent to Hamas. I can also confirm that those discussions are continuing, and we hope that a ceasefire in Gaza will take place so we can return all of the hostages home, and that's been a priority from this administration from the beginning. I won't comment further as we are in the midst of this right now.
So to be clear, you don't know if Hamas has accepted it yet?
Not to my knowledge, but certainly if that becomes the case and this ceasefire goes into effect, you'll hear it directly from myself, the president, or Special Envoy Witkoff.
And on tariffs, Kevin Hassett earlier this morning, he brushed off a legal ruling, called it a hiccup, and he said that trade deal negotiations would continue. Why would other countries continue these trade deal negotiations given the ruling?
Because Other countries around the world have faith in the negotiator-in-chief, President Donald J. Trump. And they also probably see how ridiculous this ruling is, and they understand that the administration is going to win, and we intend to win. We already filed an emergency appeal. We expect to fight this battle all the way to the Supreme Court. These other countries should also know, and they do know, that the president reserves other tariff authorities, Section 232, for example, to ensure that America's interests are being restored around the world. But I can confirm that our ambassador for trade, Jamison Greer, already heard from countries around the world this morning who said they intend to continue with these negotiations. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. So many of the president's plans right now are being blocked by courts. If the courts are going to be the ones who are shaping policy, does the president wish he would have just become a judge instead?
I think the president would take this job over being a judge, and certainly the president is acting within his authority. He wishes judges would do the same.
But so the courts are basically telling you guys they think that the White House's policies, the president's policies, are in some way against the law. So why can't President Trump ask the Republicans that control the House and the Republicans that control the Senate just to make a new law?
Well, these laws have already been granted to the president by the Constitution and by laws that have been previously passed. I'll give you another example. For instance, we've been blocked in court for the revocation of visas from individuals who have the privilege of studying in the United States of America. Secretary of State Rubio has simply used his authority to revoke those visas, to revoke that privilege, and we've seen the courts try to block that. So if these judges want to be the Secretary of State or they want to be the president, they can run for office themselves. It should be the other way around. But all of the actions the president has taken rely on legal authorities that have already been granted to him by our nation's existing laws.
And on a different topic, there are some folks in President Biden's inner circle who are now in talks with Republicans in Congress to give interviews about how they may have handled President Biden's decline. Is the president satisfied with aides only sitting for these transcribed interviews, or would he also like to see some kind of testimony from the former First Lady, Dr. Biden?
I think, frankly, the former First Lady should certainly speak up about what she saw in regards to her husband and when she saw it and what she knew, because I think anybody looking, again, at the videos and photo evidence of Joe Biden with your own eyes and a little bit of common sense can see this was a clear cover-up. And Jill Biden was certainly complicit in that cover-up. There's documentation, video evidence of her clearly shielding her husband away from the cameras. They were just on The View last week. She was saying everything is fine. She's still lying to the American people. She still thinks the American public are so stupid that they're going to believe her lies. And frankly, it's insulting, and she needs to answer for it. Ouija.
Thank you, Caroline. President Trump was asked what he thought about Elon Musk's claim that the big, beautiful bill.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Right there is the White House briefing. That's Caroline Levitt speaking, addressing reporters, answering questions there. So we'll get back to that if that is still going on. We want to shift gears now. We want to come back home. We want to come here to Charlotte. Carly knows I like when we have live guests here. And I love it.
It's a treat.
Well, it's a good topic.
Yeah.
We're talking about diversity in sports. So yesterday and today, there is Diversity in Sports Forum taking place at Central Piedmont Community College. And so it's a chance for college students, high school students, to really kind of soak up a lot of that game, a lot of that knowledge. There's a lot of game out there for young people. So it's a chance to network. It's a career fair, panel discussion.
It's good to start early.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I wish I was able to be a part of something like that. So whenever I hear about something like this, I'm like, man, this is cool.
The opportunities we could,
I'm a champion.
Yeah.
I'm a champion for this. So I want to read what's on the Diversity in Sports website. So basically their mission, the Diversity in Sports Hub, seeks to introduce young adults to the dynamics of the sports industry with a keen focus on strengthening mental health through effective career development, improve opportunities for emerging professionals from all backgrounds and women in the realm of sports. And we are joined today by one of the panelists today. He's going to leave here and head straight to the forum. So I got him on a tight little timeline right now. This is Brandon Comer, managing partner of Alterity Capital and CCG, and co-founder of the National Black Bank Foundation. Thank you for joining us, man.
No, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Did you fly in?
I flew in this morning.
And luckily, the station is not far from the airport.
Thank goodness.
Before we get to what you do, the panel itself, you're from Gary, Indiana, man.
I am from Gary.
How did you get into, and you went to school in New Orleans?
Undergrad in New Orleans.
Xavier University. I mean, let me make sure I shout them
Thanks
out.
you,
I don't want any
appreciate
problem. How did you get into finance?
I actually started off bio pre-med and did an internship, realized I didn't like it. I already had finance as a minor. And then I did an internship on Wall Street, fell in love with it.
Really?
Absolutely.
It's
all
just like
about
that?
exposure. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't a path I thought about or was even exposed to at a younger age. But in school, one of my professors said, you should try this out. I followed his advice, and 20-something years later, I'm sitting here.
Man, talk about so when we think about diversity in sports, we don't really think about the finance part of it.
Right.
We think about being the athlete. Yeah, mostly being an athlete, because
Right.
I have a nephew that's I'm thinking of my nephew. He's 14 years old, and he's like, Uncle Nick, I want to get an NIL deal. I want to go to the NFL.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, don't forget about your Uncle Nick. But why is it important for you to, I'll talk about that game, give that game to these young people when it comes to the finance side of things?
Well, exposure is everything, right? And so there are so many pathways that we can follow that we just don't know about. And when you think about sports, to your point, you think about on the court, or you may think about being the owner of a team or the president, but there are so many other professions or careers you can follow. But then you can also be an entrepreneur and do business with these teams and with these leagues. And so that's the purpose of this forum, is to really, expand, what people see as the possibility of how to engage with the business of sport. And for me, it's kind of come full circle. I was an athlete, and then I went the traditional investment banking route. And on the public finance side, we used to finance some arenas or stadiums through bond issues. But to now sit in this seat, post George Floyd's murder, a good friend of mine and I created the National Black Bank Foundation. And we started pulling all of the black banks in the country together to lend into sports. Because one of the things we realized is a lot of the talent come from black and brown communities that are typically underrepresented. And so when we think about these teams and these leagues and who they should be doing business with, we said financial institutions that serve the communities where this talent comes from and where the customer base comes from is a great way to not only do business, but to give back to those communities. And so the Atlanta Hawks, not to bring up a rival, was our first transaction. We took 10 black banks, financed their practice facility, making it the first professional sports facility in the country, financed with all minority capital. Then after that, we did the same thing with Major League Soccer as a league. And then after that, we worked with the NFL and the Milwaukee Bucks, so on and so forth. And so we're about $1.6 billion in transactions in after that, and that's just exposure that these minority-owned banks would have never had prior to.
I got a chance to read your article on News One recently. Check it out. It's a really good article. And my biggest takeaway is financial inclusion.
Yeah.
And that's what you're all about. Can you talk about that article a little bit, and the importance of financial inclusion?
Yeah. One, I appreciate you reading the op-ed. One of the things that we realized, and one of the deals I didn't mention, is we helped finance the Baltimore Arena. And in that deal, the company that we worked with, Oakview Group, we said it would be really great if we could put a fund together that invests in venues, that invests in sports-related assets and ancillary businesses. Because while we're talking about front office positions and doing business with these leagues and teams, we also want to democratize ownership, right? And so when you think about these assets, it's no longer just a stadium or an arena by itself. It's these entertainment districts, and you have all of these retail developments popping up alongside it, and all of those things generate, returns for investors. And so the point of the piece was to let people know that this is no longer an asset class that's solely for the ultra rich. There are now vehicles, whether it's funds like ours, where you can get a piece of the pie, right? You can expand your portfolio and invest in something that you actively more than likely participate in, and where you spend your money. And when you tell your kids how to invest, when you're teaching them how to invest, the first thing you do is say, oh, well, let me show you how to buy a stock. What company, what do you eat, right? Like the first stocks that I owned were McDonald's and Coca-Cola, right? That's my dad said, you know this, so you should be an owner of it. And that's how we want people to think about sports. You no longer have to purely have an aspiration to play, and if you want to play, that's fine. But you can also think about ownership, and you can also think about owning a business that's engaged with these type of entities as well.
In sports, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I gather in the article, any investment is risky, but not as risky, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want to. I'm kind of teetering the line a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay. I don't want to have to get my full compliance disclaimer.
That was my takeaway.
But no, I mean, you think about it, right? A pandemic happened. What the NBA do? They built a bubble.
Yeah.
Right. These are what you might consider somewhat recession-proof type of investments. People love sports. They love entertainment. And so they're not necessarily as risky from that perspective. And even within sports, you still can have a lot of diversification, right? So when you think about a venue, for example, you've got the team that's playing, but then you've got the food and beverage providers that are inside. You've got IT companies that are inside. You've got another company that's helping with the fan engagement and fan experience. So even within the world of sports, that ecosystem is pretty broad. And that's what we want people to realize is, even if you're building an app, are you thinking about how can I enhance my experience that I had at a game? So there are a lot of different pathways, and that's really what we want to shine a light on.
How do you get kids to buy in? Because kids, and I say kids because we were once kids. Look, the shiny object is being the star player, right? Like, how do you get kids to be interested? I know, there's success at some point if you're doing it right, but. When you're a little kid, you're not really, I don't want to call them little kids, but when you're a teenager, you're not really thinking about the long term. You're thinking about the short term.
Yeah.
So how you get them to buy in?
The truth.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And the truth is, you've got a 1 in a billion chance on the court.
That's true.
I was one of the ones that had to accept that truth. But no, I think we have to start really being honest with our kids, and it's not to temper or damper their dreams, but there needs to be some level of reality. If you're not at a certain stage by a certain point, then there's probably not a high likelihood that you're going to play professionally on the court. But if you love the game, and that's the other thing, we got to teach our kids, do you just want to play or do you love the sport? Right. Because if you love the sport, then you'll want to be around the sport. You'll want to engage the sport in different ways. And so I think you just start with that love and say, you can still play, but let me expose you to some other things that are happening in and around the sport. And the earlier you introduce them to that, the earlier they can accept that this is a legitimate pathway. And it also could be a buffer. So if they don't make it onto the court, they've already accepted, oh, well, I can still do this, right? And so they don't have to suffer that hard jab.
It's a hard jab.
Yeah, it can be a hard jab. We all know some people who who've had to face that. But that's why, again, I think exposure is important, and the earlier you can expose and the more often, the more frequent. That's why we've had an internship program ever since I started my first company in 2008. I believe in exposure. Forums like this are a great pathway. You see a lot more teams and leagues that are active in the community and saying, we want you to be a part of what we're doing, and not just as a fan or not just through your spend, but also as a pathway professionally.
What have you learned from, I'm sure this isn't your first panel, but what do you learn from panels like this?
I think the first thing I learn, I'm always looking for something I don't know. And so inevitably somebody drops a little pearl, right? And I'm like, I appreciate that. So I had to learn how an organization is addressing things in this current environment, which is important, right? Because this isn't static, it's fluid. There are always changing dynamics, the landscape changes. I mean, COVID, for example, was a huge opportunity for people to say, how do we still engage, how do we still deliver this product when we can't assemble people, you know, in mass? And so I'm always looking for how people are thinking. And most importantly, I'm always looking for what's next, right? A lot of people want to build based on what's happened historically. I think we need to know that, but we also need to really keep our eyes on where is this going? Where is this game going? Where is this going? Especially from an investment standpoint, because you're investing because you want to hold this and have it for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
What happened 10 years ago may not be as helpful, right? That may not be the exact roadmap. So I'm always looking to peek into people's insights as to what's coming next so that we can adjust and we can be a part of the new experience.
How can folks, because let me plug it again, because the Diversity in Sports panel, 3 to 5:30. So look, you got a little bit of time to get there. Yeah. You're going to be there as a panelist. How can folks get in touch with you? I know you are a person. I don't even want to see your email inbox. Yeah. A man in demand. But what is the easiest way for people to get in contact? Just again, soak up some of this game from you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yep, you can find us online at alterity.capital. That's ALTERITY.capital. My email address actually is a good way to reach me. Okay. So Brandon.Comer@alterity.capital. And you can follow me on IG at Brandon L. Comer.
That's Brandon Comer, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for stopping by.
I appreciate you for having me.
Next time you're in Charlotte, you got to come back in.
I definitely will.
You got to come back.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. That is a great event that is starting in about an hour-ish, but 3 to 5:30, great event. You got the information there. The full interview will be on our website at some point very soon, also on YouTube, so check that out. We want to go back now to the White House briefing that is taking place. Let's take a listen in.
To hear something from President Trump announcing that?
As I said earlier, yes, indeed. If there is an announcement to be made, it will come from the White House, the President, myself, or Special Envoy Witkoff.
Finally, Caroline, one big beautiful bill. The President says he's not happy with all aspects of it. What changes would he like to see be made? And can this bill be both big and beautiful?
It is a one big beautiful bill, as the name rings true. And the President, as I said, is currently working with his friends in the Senate who have some recommendations for the bill. Those negotiations and discussions are continuing, but the President's ultimate priority is to get this bill back to his desk for signature. And the President's priorities in this bill are non-negotiable in terms of the tax priorities he wants to see and the large tax cuts in the border investments that are currently in this bill. He is not going to allow them to go away for the American people. Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about, has the President spoken to any of these foreign leaders about these agreements that have been reached, specifically the case of the United Kingdom that already has an agreement in place after this decision of the court in New York?
Has the President talked to foreign leaders about what?
About the court decision in New York.
Which court decision in New York?
The trade court.
Oh, the trade court decision. He did speak to the leader of Japan this morning, and he said that was a very good call and a good discussion. And as I said, the President's cabinet, Secretary Lutnick, Secretary Bessent, and Ambassador Jameson Greer have all been in touch with their counterparts in countries around the world to let them know the United States will still be at the negotiating table, and we still expect countries around the world to treat us fairly. Again, I will just close by saying that how ridiculous it is that we have been ripped off. Our middle class has been hollowed out. Our manufacturing base has left and gone overseas. Jobs have been offshored. And now no court did anything about that. No court did anything about hundreds of thousands of people being put out of work, about thousands of factories being closed down, about our deficits going to dangerous levels, as the New York Times has said. But now a court is trying to stop a president from trying to correct those wrongs of the past. And this administration will continue to do that. It's a promise the president made to the American people, and it's a promise they elected him on. We will win this battle in court, and the president will implement his America First trade policies. Thank you, everyone.
Is the U.S. Steel situation tomorrow this week?
I can tell you the president greatly looks forward to going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he will discuss this historic deal and discuss American jobs and American steel, and we hope to see you all there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Caroline.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. The White House briefing just wrapping up. All right, so we want to shift now back to the press conference earlier that we played. Let me pull up the notes, make sure I get you the right information. All right. So basically, South Carolina Museum was able to get some historic photos after a 15-year battle with Harvard University. The family of what may be known as the earliest photos of enslaved people were given to the International African American Museum there in South Carolina. Let's take you back there to that press conference that we were playing earlier.
Pilfered property, images taken without dignity or consent and used to promote a racist pseudoscience will now be repatriated to a home where their stories can be told and their humanity can be restored. The Lanier v. Harvard lawsuit is historic, not only for what it sought, but what it represents, a moral reckoning. A landmark lawsuit that dared to demand redress for a centuries-old wrong. For the first time in the history of this country, a major American institution has offered a tangible remedy to atone for its legacy of slavery and the profound harm it has inflicted. This is more than a legal resolution, it's a reckoning. It's reparations. Institutions like Harvard must acknowledge what has long been denied, that descendants have a right to reclaim that which was wrongfully taken. This case affirms a powerful truth, that voices of descendants matter, that oral history passed down through the generations of Black families carry weight and wisdom, that we, the children of those who endured unspeakable cruelties, are the rightful stewards of our own family stories and sacred legacies. This is also a victory for ethical stewardship. Institutions that hold the spoils of slavery must do more than reflect. They must act. Justice requires no less. To my dream team, the brilliant attorneys of Koskoff, Beater, and Ben Crump Law, LLC, in addition to attorney Tali Keiko and the late Mark Matarazzi, there is simply no words to express my deepest and sincere gratitude for your steadfast and unwavering support. You are to be commended for your fearless and relentless pursuit of justice for my enslaved ancestors. To the late attorney Michael Koskoff and to attorney Ben Crump, I want to thank you. I want you to know that you were right when so many others believed you to be wrong. You filed this complaint despite insurmountable odds, and even with the concept of the words reparation for slavery being so toxic. You did so because you firmly believe that there should be no harm without a remedy. We are on the right side of history, and this is your validation. And I want to read to you from my book, just a line or two from my book. And I'm taking from the acknowledgement section where I write. And this was written almost 2 years ago, published in January. To my Papa Rinty, I want to acknowledge that I see your despair and feel your pain. The look in your eyes is a call to action, a plea for me to right a centuries-old wrong. I want you to know that for as long as I live, I vow to never stop naming, blaming, or shaming Harvard until they do right by you. Papa Rinty, I am grateful for you and thankful for your tenacious and unwavering fight to safeguard our family legacy. Your message was not lost, and because of you, generations will never forget. To my mother, Mattie Pearl Thompson Lanier, the woman whom I was blessed to call mother, there's not a dawn that rises nor a sun that sets where I don't think of you and miss you terribly. I will love you forever. You will always be. I want to thank you for being the keeper of our family story, and acknowledge that it was your attention to detail and your steadfast commitment to document our ancestry that brought us to this moment in history. You are the epitome of selfless love, strength, and I can't even see, my eyes are watering. Strength and unflattering, I don't know. Thank you for being my constant source of inspiration. In our last moments together, I promised you something that I believed to be impossible. I promised you to document the life and legacy of a proud Black African. That promise is now fulfilled. This book is a testament. This book and this settlement, this victory is a testament.
This is
To your enduring love and boundless spirit. And I go on to thank my daughters Shauna and Megan, who are with me today, and my sister, my friends, my family, my NAACP family, to Tim and Juliet, councilwoman from the city of Groton, and the Moores, the Anderson's descendants. They have been with me every step of the way, and I'm eternally grateful for your support. Thank you.
And finally, we will hear from one of the descendants of Louis Atkinson.
Right. My name is Susanna Moore, and I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of Louis Agassiz. Congratulations to Tamara Lanier, her daughters, and the hard-working attorneys who brought this case. To Ellie Reichland, now deceased, who found the daguerreotypes in 1976 in a box at Harvard's Peabody Museum and knew that they portrayed someone's family members, but was discouraged by Harvard to find them. To the genealogists who helped Ms. Lanier reconnect family threads that had been broken a century and a half before. To Sasha Huber, the mountain-loving ally who renamed a snowy Alp in Switzerland, Rentihorn. Congratulations to the many Harvard students whose movement on campus to free Renty sought to bring Harvard to account for its past by acknowledging the present. A descendant of enslaved people was knocking on the door of power to say that the famous daguerreotypes were in fact the most precious of family photos. This victory reminds us that the meaning of such objects in museums can and should change. Embracing her mother's dying wish to uncover who her people were, Tamara graced us all. No longer were the daguerreotypes at the Peabody Museum anonymous portrayals that just happened to reside there, their origins obscured. Tamara helped us understand they were objects stolen for a deeply racist project by my ancestor. And even more radical, the images needed to be treasured. Portrayals, they were portrayals of people, of relatives. This is where we are as a nation. Native families' belongings also sit on similar shelves throughout our country. Tamara helped a generation of Harvard students understand that the daguerreotypes were not just ill-gotten, but were symbolic of the fundamental need for Harvard, the wealthiest and most prestigious university in the world, to reckon with its past, with slavery and its profits. It would have been so easy for Tamara to give up, as it would be for us in this historical moment to give up, given what's happening around us. She could have given up when she first reached out to the Harvard president, herself an historian of the Civil War era, and was batted away. She could have given up when Harvard's faculty ignored her miraculous story of discovery. Renty is my great-great-great-grandfather. I've been hearing about him since I was a little girl. I have the research to prove it. She could have given up after she spent hours telling her story to the Harvard student newspaper, The Crimson, only to have them quash the article because, as they told her in the email, the Peabody Museum has doubts. She could have given up when she and her daughter were belatedly allowed to attend a conference at Harvard in 2017 on universities and slavery. Not only was there a huge poster of Renty displayed there without the essential context of how the image had been obtained, but a blurb there described him as invisible to history, saying that the image came from Agassiz' scientific research. This was after she had offered every which way for someone at Harvard to look over her genealogical research, painstaking work that placed Renty and his daughter Delia within her family tree. That's a miracle. She could have given up when a Boston Globe journalist told her she had no business going up against Harvard in this company town. Who do you think you are? He pressed her. To him, she was audacious. But this woman standing next to me, she knew all along she was not small and she was not alone. Her seeming audacity was actually a clear-eyed request. I believe you have something of mine? She was not small and she was not alone because her mother's spirit lived inside of her. And her mother's story had become her story and her daughter's story and now her grandson's. And back through generations before, that story began with a community leader named Renty, whose spirit burned so brightly, we stand here today, 175 years later, celebrating him and his tenacious great-great-great-granddaughter. Tamara knew in her bones that though others were awed by the power and wealth of Harvard, her request was not outrageous, not audacious, not unreasonable. So when Harvard judged her to be unimportant, she dug in deeper, scoured records, traveled to the plantation where her ancestors had lived, and had her research verified by a noted genealogist. Thus fortified, she came back to demand, with attorneys alongside, what she had come to learn were not only portraits of treasured ancestors, but icons portraying a terrible moment in the epic battle over slavery in this country. A moment when my great-great-great-grandfather, the famous biologist Louis Agassiz, backed by Harvard, used the power and prestige of his education and achievements to forcibly take images of Renty and Delia and the other enslaved people that day. To be honest, this was also a weighty gift to me and to our family. For while I'd known vaguely that my ancestor was associated with racist ideas, it wasn't until Tamara courageously demanded the daguerreotypes, until she raised up Renty's story, that I found my capacity to look ever more deeply at my own inheritance of whiteness. While I considered myself an anti-racist, I shrank away from learning about my own family. So I read everything I could about my ancestor. And what I found was a talented scientist who bought into the racism of his time and profited by bringing terrible harm to generations of African Americans. I will be forever grateful to Tamara for her welcoming of our family as her allies, because she gave us a new place to stand. It feels much better to know and to fight for what's just than to turn away. I've realized that the wealth and privilege that I grew up with has origins in terrible injustices and exploitation, and that such gains and losses are anything but natural. And if we're to transcend this historical moment, if hope is a practice, then we must learn from the tenacity, and if you want to call it that, audacity, of Tamara Lanier. When she set out on her quest, Tamara hoped that if her beloved mother remembered Renty, then she could also remember him. And she did. She did bring him and the others who were humiliated alongside him in a photography studio in South Carolina. She did bring him back to her family and to the multitudes of Black people who also remember and grieve the harm done to their ancestors, but who will never know their faces. From now on, those who view Renty's and Delia's faces and the others portrayed will do so within an institution that honors their humanity, knows their suffering, and acknowledges their descendant, Tamara Thompson Lanier, the woman who brought them home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Susanna Moore. What a great example of allyship. Thank you.
We'll do a couple questions if anybody has.
Thank you. 7 o'clock, Andrew. Well,
All right, we want to come back home and get a check of the forecast. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. We've got the chance for some strong storms to our south today, but a bigger chance of severe weather for most of the Carolinas going into Friday. So let's get right to it. We're going to show you the wide view first, and we can see the systems that are going to be impacting us over the next 48 hours. Here's the system that will be passing mainly into South Carolina tonight. So South Carolina followers, you're going to have the risk for some strong storms this afternoon and this evening. North Carolina, less of a risk. Friday, this is the system that moves across the entire area, and everybody gets a chance for seeing some severe weather with that system. So let's break down the risk for severe storms. So here's the risk for severe weather today, Thursday the 29th. You can see across Texas, and then in the Carolinas, we'll zoom in on the area that we're most concerned about. It's down here in the low country from the Midlands down to southeast Georgia. There's a low chance up here, but I'll be honest with you, it looks like good old-fashioned storms. Risk of a severe storm there is 5% or less, so not a really big deal. So not overly concerned. Now tomorrow, different story. Look at the risk. We've got a big area of medium. This is what we're going to see. We're going to see a line of storms in the morning over here in Tennessee, marching to the east. So in the afternoon and early evening, we're going to see the risk for some strong and severe storms as that moves in. And then on Saturday, that system pushes off to the north and east, and we see a low risk going up into the Tidewater region. So it really focusing here on the risk for severe weather on Friday. That's why today we want you to stay weather aware. Let's show you the futurecast, and I'll show you some of the parameters coming together. So we start with today's risk of strong storms. We're dry this morning. We had a few pop-up showers, but you'll see as we go into the afternoon, this is around 2:30. You see the storms moving in. Now, everybody will likely see some rain this evening. I'm going to stop this at 5 o'clock because I think this is the time frame most people will start to really pay attention. You can see some scattered storms in the mountains, but this is the area down here. So from Myrtle Beach to Charleston to Savannah, that's an area I'd watch for a strong storm this evening. But everybody will see at least a few scattered storms. You can see even through 10 or 11 o'clock, those moving through. Now, tomorrow, this is where things get a little bit more widespread and probably a higher risk of severe weather. We'll stop this right around after sunrise. This is about 8:30 in the morning. We'll go to about 10:30. I'm going to stop this around lunchtime. So lunchtime, the speed of the system is the key part. So there's a little wiggle room on the time of arrival. So if we have time for the atmosphere to warm up and warm, humid air to surge in from the south, this line will have a lot more fuel to be strong or severe. So at 12, if it's just entering the mountains, that is not even close to peak heating. Peak heating this time of year is around 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Really late evening, late afternoon, early evening is when we see the worst of it. So this is around 2 o'clock. Storms are moving east, and you notice these storms are getting more vigorous, and there's brighter returns, at least on the reflectivity. I'll stop this around 3 o'clock. Couple things to point out here. Looks like to the south, we definitely have some kind of bowing segment, but even in here, we could have some gusty winds and an isolated supercell. If it stays linear, it's going to be more of a straight line risk. If we see individual cells, then we worry more about a tornado risk and damaging wind. So this is 4 o'clock. You can see there's definitely bowing segments. What I mean by that is you think about a bow and arrow, the shape of a bow is like this, and then the arrow would be pushed through like that. These bowing segments are an indication that you've got strong winds. The arrow is basically the wind pushing them out. And so you know you have strong winds in there. But where they meet up sometimes, like in areas like here, up here, sometimes at the apex of the bow, you can get quick spin up tornadoes. So that's always a possibility. But you see it pushing through by 5 o'clock, and then it becomes really vigorous because this is max heating. Remember, 5 o'clock, as I said, heating of the day. So you see why central North Carolina to the Midlands might end up with the highest risk of severe weather, and this pushes east through the evening. This is 5:50, basically 6 o'clock, and then all the way to 7 o'clock in the evening starts to push off the coast, and we're out of here. Might be a trailing batch of isolated showers and storms. I'm not expecting much out of that. And by the time we get to Saturday morning, everything is gone. So let's look at that tornado parameter. Today, not much. There's not a lot going on. We go into Friday, you see during the day as that system approaches, there's not a lot of STP, or what we call significant tornado parameter. It's not really crazy high. So the tornado risk is not zero, but it's not really high either. I think this is going to be a straight line in hail risk unless the cells become individual. We'll quickly look at the helicity tracks, which show the potential for rotating storms, which mean both hail producers and possibly damaging winds and an isolated tornado. But you see, overall, there's not a ton of helicity tracks. There's a few here in eastern North Carolina on Friday and a couple down in South Carolina. But overall, that's not a ton of them for this kind of setup. If we were more worried about tornadoes, we'd see a lot more of that parameter showing up there. So what we're watching for are two lines of storms, one coming in later this afternoon, the lesser of the two. The one tomorrow, you see it blasting through here in the middle of the afternoon. And because of that, on Friday, we want you to stay weather aware and alert, because potentially mid-afternoon, right now the timing does look like noon to 6 p.m. for the Western Carolinas, and probably 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for central and eastern North Carolina. So that'll give you a quick heads up. And of course, stay tuned for updates. Have your phone charged fully. Make sure you have 3 ways to get weather alerts for any warnings or watches that could be issued coming up on Friday.
And that was Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich giving us an outlook on our forecast. Now, and again, we are weather alert tomorrow as we deal with some strong thunderstorms that are set to roll through our area late afternoon into the evening. All right, we're going to shift gears now. We want to go to D.C., where the State Department briefing is happening live. Right there on your screen is spokesperson Tammy Bruce. Let's take a listen in.
When it comes to keeping America safe, the United States, I further can say here, will not tolerate the CCP's exploitation of U.S. universities or theft of U.S. research, intellectual property, or technologies to grow its military power, conduct intelligence collection, or repress voices of opposition. The Trump administration is focused on protecting our nation and our citizens by upholding our national security and public safety through our visa process, obviously very openly and transparently applied by Secretary Marco Rubio. Every visa adjudication is a national security decision. Every single one of them. Every prospective traveler to the United States undergoes interagency security vetting. Prohibiting entry to the United States by those who might pose a threat to U.S. national security or public safety is key to protecting U.S. citizens at home. So we've experienced this through these last several weeks. It is something that is at the heart and really at the front line of protecting the country. And we're taking it seriously, and we're being open about the nature of what's happening in this particular instance.
So can I just ask that last bit that you just said, which was not in the statement last night, and is a little bit more specific about?
About the nature of the theft of certain things.
Yes,
well, we again, and as reporters here all, and curious people, you know the nature of what China has been doing about, with technology, right? Stealing information, intellectual property, U.S. research, copyrights, etc. This is not new or confusing, and this is one way that we certainly can try to mitigate that issue. Yes, Andrea Mitchell.
Let me one follow-up on that, and then I want to ask you
Of
about
course.
Hamas and Gaza and Israel.
Certainly.
Is there any reevaluation of TikTok and its vulnerabilities as was defined by the previous administration as dangerous for national security reasons? Does the White House, does the administration have any reevaluation of TikTok in this context as you're cracking down on these?
I would say you'd have to send that question, ask that of the White House. What we do know, though, of course, is that we're serious about Chinese intervention here, if you will, the nature of what's driving, of course, this new visa vetting dynamic. But for that specifically, I know the President has spoke on it. You'll need to ask the White House.
And let me ask you about the
Yes.
possibility of a tentative acceptance by Israel of a ceasefire.
Let me come back to you on that. I think many of you also have the visa questions, correct? Are we dealing, let's stick with visas, because there's many different issues at hand, not just this one regarding China. So Daphne.
Issues.
Yeah, we'll get to Gaza after that, yes.
Thank you. There are hundreds of thousands of Chinese students currently in the U.S. What proportion does the State Department expect will face visa revocations?
Oh, I can't answer that at all. I mean, one of the things we also, even if I was inclined to want to answer, is we're not going to speculate on where this would go. A lot of this clearly is, perhaps has not been done before, as we look at this dynamic and make a determination of exactly what's been happening in this country. A great deal of what President Trump has done and what Secretary Rubio is doing is beginning to look at certain things, whether it's foreign aid, the nature of visas, how people are getting here, what's happening at the universities, the things we've seen that we don't like that have emerged from them. But I certainly would not hazard to suggest that the numbers matter. What the story is here is that the issue of being serious about safety for the country matters, and we're going to look at that at every single front. So I think it's less about numbers and more about the fact that we're keeping America safe and taking the actions that we need to do that.
At the tail end of Trump's first administration, the U.S. revoked visas for more than 1,000 Chinese students and researchers that were deemed security risks. Should we expect the actions that Secretary Rubio announced yesterday to exceed those first-term measures?
You love the numbers. She loves the numbers. Daphne from Reuters. How many originally did you say Chinese students were here?
The hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. And so you've provided a number of about 1,000, which I'm not quite sure how that number even would have been a number that you could rely on, because Consular Affairs does not provide numbers. We don't discuss visas that are issued, visas that are removed, things that are revoked. Those are numbers that are not shared, are not provided, and I would suggest using caution if someone has given you a number like that. I have no idea what the numbers will be. What I do know is that the people who are deemed to be a threat to the country or a problem now will be vetted again or looked at seriously, and Americans will be safer. That's the story here.
And then just on the visa restriction policy announced yesterday over the censoring of Americans, can you provide any specific examples of what actions prompted the U.S. to institute this policy? And when might we expect any visa restrictions to be implemented?
In a case like this, you're looking at a policy that is a reflection of what the Trump administration and the American people care about, which is the idea of Americans being censored. We experienced this through COVID, the nature of our ability to be able to speak our minds. And while I won't give you, or can give you, or would give you specifics about how this particular restriction would be approached, which is not done in a blanket way, right? That there's individuals who are flagged or who are seen as being a participant in some aspect of the censorship of Americans. What I can say is that all of what you see emanating from the Trump administration and the State Department is a reflection of the policy of this administration and what the American people want and expect when it comes to what their futures are going to hold. Again, on visas,
Yes.
Hold on, please.
Still on visas.
Still on visas. One moment, I'll be back with you. Yes.
One on the cable that went out on Tuesday, it said they expected this expanded social media vetting guidance for visa applicants to go out in the coming days. Are you still tracking that timeline, and give us any
Yes.
guidance on what that is going
Yes,
to
I
look
can't
like?
give you a specific timeline, but there will be more information. What I can say is that, in general, because that was an internal communication that was leaked, at the same time, we have confirmed that the details are accurate. Also, the Trump administration is focused on protecting our nation and our citizens by upholding the highest standards of national security and public safety through the visa process specifically. Every adjudication, as I noted to you, is a national security decision, and a visa, as a reminder, is not a privilege. It's a privilege, it's not a right, it's not a birthright, it's not something that you're owed, no matter where you come from. Every prospective traveler to the United States undergoes interagency security vetting, and this is important with these conversations because it seems like only certain groups are facing vetting with visas. Every single person does. So I would say that, yes, you're going to get more information, and this is, as a result, not an interminable kind of end. There is an end point, and it should be rather quick, as consulates and embassies make adjustments when it comes to how they handle
Can we
visas.
expect the appointments to open back up immediately after that guidance goes out to posts?
Well, one thing I can tell you, a few things I can say is people can still make their application, do their regular steps, but it's a two-step process, right? You apply, and then you have to get an appointment to meet with people, to talk with them. Unlike often with the passport or something, there's a very specific process. So right now, there might be some delay, and what I'm told to encourage people to do is to regularly check to see when those spaces open. So as opposed to, let me just say, I would not be recommending that if this was going to be weeks or months. So if you've applied for a visa and you want to, please do. Then if you're not getting an appointment, there's this online system. You continually recheck to see when those spots might open. I can't tell you immediately after some, indeterminate moment of an action, but I can tell you that it's something that would happen perhaps sooner than later.
And then one more. On Harvard, my understanding is you are now reviewing all of the visas of Harvard-affiliated visa holders, not just students. Can you confirm that? And why is this broader review taking place? Do you expect it to impact medical professionals, for example, professors at the university?
I hesitate only because all of this is regarding visas and the nature of our mission and the approach that we take regarding who is being scrutinized and how we're going to approach. So we're going to put that off. I think we probably will have a bit more on that next week, perhaps, but we'll put that off now. But what I can say clearly with all of the news over the last 48 hours is that the visa process is a key component of keeping the country safe. It is not targeted at certain only specific individuals. This is an overarching national security action, and we are acting quickly. Obviously, we're a nation that loves people coming here the legal way, and we want to help facilitate that, but not at our own risk. Sean.
Sure. More on the visas. If you don't mind me emphasizing, as Daphne and Matt asked you, on the language, the Secretary's statement yesterday aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, including those with connections. It's not specific. He's not saying specifically those with connections. So, there are 277,000 Chinese students in the United States. Should all of them feel that they're at some risk of having their visas revoked?
I think everyone who's here on a visa has to recognize, certainly is what they've seen over the last few months, that America takes their visas seriously, that vetting is not a one-time process, it's continuing. And that if things happen, if you get arrested, if there's some kind of an issue, it's probably going to be seen at some point. But I do think that with this particular dynamic, it's clear that there's an interest in making sure that those who are here from China on a visa understand that we are taking our national security seriously, and we are looking at their visas, and if everything's fine, terrific. But that will be a vetting that certainly continues and is important, clearly, to the administration.
And a bit broader, you said if everything is fine, you're welcome. More broadly, all these things that are going on with the student visas, with the vetting, with the suspension for now of new appointments. Is it still a priority for the administration to encourage students to come to the United States? They have other options. It's been said that Hong Kong, for example, is now saying students at Harvard, doctoral students, have a fast track to go there. Is there any concern that the U.S. is losing a competition? After all, there's $50 billion into the economy from international
Yeah,
students.
well, people come here because this is where you start new lives, where you have every opportunity in the world. There's a reason why people come here. It's because of what the country represents. Yes, the excellence of our schools, and we want to keep it that way. We want parents who send their children, whether they be from a different country or America, to an American university, that they can recognize their child when that child returns home. And that child actually has skills and an education that can improve their future, that can get them a job, that can help facilitate the dreams that they've had, as opposed to political indoctrination or the idea of just activism or a certain political framework that they move out with. This should be an education that is literally liberal, The idea that you learn things that help facilitate your life no matter where you come from, who you are, if you're a Jew or a non-believer or an atheist or black or white or a woman. We've been through this in this country for the last 2 to 3 generations still. And our focus is making sure that everyone who does want to send their child to a school in this country can do so knowing that they're going to be safe. They're going to be able to get into a building and not held hostage in a library because it's been occupied, or that they're going to be able to actually learn things that you're paying that kind of money for. So yes, it not only should encourage more people, for those who are already here, it's certainly an important dynamic for believing and understanding that your child's going to be safe and that you're going to get something that you've paid for more than a social activist who lives in your basement.
Can I switch to the Middle East, or does anybody else have any?
Well, yeah, you know, it's an unusual day for me, and time flies, doesn't it? Well, you know, so many people, too many people, Matt. So we've talked a great deal about the visas. And Gaza, you know? All right. We had Gaza. Where is she? There she is in the blue jacket. You'll be second. We'll go to Andrea on Gaza, and then we'll go into the back.
I was
Yes.
to ask you about the reported acceptance by Israel of a ceasefire for Gaza. What you can fill in about that? Does it include expanding food deliveries? Does it include the south as well as the north? And do you know whether Hamas has signed on to this? And is Qatar or Oman?
Well, we know there's been a proposal put forward that seems to be promising. We are unaware of Hamas accepting it, but we do believe that it has some significant promise. We would, of course, as you might imagine, it's been a goal of the administration to get all the hostages out, certainly the bodies that are being held, and so. And I believe that Caroline addressed this too, I think, earlier. Yes, so there is some optimism, some important optimism, but the aspect regarding Hamas and its position is unknown at this point. But I think that there's some optimism regarding what has been proposed.
Do you know if this came from Mr. Witkoff and Dermer and the other envoys who were here from Israel this week?
Well, I believe that certainly Special Envoy Witkoff, as he's been involved in most issues and our successes, but at this point, we're still waiting to get some kind of a final point put on that, which would allow even more humanitarian aid to move in, and certainly the return of hostages and bodies. This is what we always are working on, and we're excited that this might be a good development. All right, Nadia.
Thank you. I'm following up on Gaza again. Caroline just said now, actually, that both the Israelis and agreed to it, and they're waiting for.
That's correct. So this is when we say this in optimism, it means Israel's agreed. All right. So we're in a very good position, I think.
But as you know, the president said he wants to see an end to this war. Is this any U.S. guarantee that actually they're going to discuss the end of the war after the 60-day ceasefire? Because every time they reach that stop and the ceasefire collapse is because...
Well, the ceasefires don't collapse. Ceasefires are ignored by Hamas, and they're broken by Hamas. They don't just collapse under their weight. Every moment, though, even without a ceasefire and without agreements like this, there's the constant effort to get this heinous situation to end, and not just for the moment, not for the 60 days or 6 months. That is the hallmark of President Trump's vision, and what the secretaries worked for, what our special envoys have worked for. Special Envoy Witkoff could be, just like President Trump, enjoying a very comfortable life somewhere else. But these are men and women who've made this kind of commitment. So I would say that obviously the end goal is an end. But ending the murders, the slaughter, the carnage, and getting people what they need is key. And that, of course, you can't. It's different. And I think Zelensky had noted this as well, right? I mean, you can't talk about peace as you're being shot at and killed. I mean, it's one thing has to be able to lead to the other. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. All right. Now, in the blue, I've skipped you off. And are you on this part?
I want to go back to the visa.
Visa. All right. Let's get one more question regarding Gaza. And yes, in Middle East. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yes, you go ahead first. We won't go right back. We won't go to visas. We've spent a great deal of time on that. Go ahead.
Me? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I got a Gaza visa question rolled into one, so it's jackpot. The Mahmoud Khalil case, the federal district judge ruling yesterday that while he found that Khalil gave insufficient responses to allegations that he omitted key information from his application, the judge also ruled that Secretary Rubio's determination that Khalil's activities would have an adverse impact on American foreign policy were unconstitutionally vague. Does the secretary have a reaction to that, number one? And number two, does it change the position or the tactic going forward in these
Yeah, so again, let's just take that back for next week. I mean, I do want to get a direct response for you for that, but I literally have to go in a few minutes. And normally I would stay for as long as I could, but there's something I can't avoid. Yes, yes. All right, we'll go to Russia, Ukraine. Yes? All right.
Obviously, the Secretary connected with his counterpart in Russia yesterday. In their call, did Mr. Lavrov give Secretary Rubio any indication of whether and when this peace memorandum that Russia promised would materialize? President Zelensky is saying nobody has seen it, and Secretary Rubio has said it's an important indicator of how serious Russia is about continuing negotiations. So I'm wondering if you have an update.
Yes, again, we've said multiple times that we're going to judge Russia based not on what they say, but on what they do. And right now what's happening is not good, right? So you've heard that from the president. What I can tell you is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in fact, did speak with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. Secretary Rubio welcomed, as we all did, the exchange of 1,000 for 1,000 prisoners, which happened over the weekend. That was arranged, I believe, while we were in Istanbul, Turkey. The secretary reiterated President Trump's calls for constructive, good faith dialogue with Ukraine as the only path forward ending the war. So that's what we're saying about the call itself, and we'll have to kind of leave that there.
On the question of the good faith dialogue,
sure.
Does the Secretary believe that what the Russians have offered in terms of these direct talks with the Ukrainians in Istanbul, is that being offered in good faith? We understand it's the same delegation that was dispatched last time. Is this actually going to move the ball forward, or is it a rehashing?
Right. Well, that's kind of, I think, at the heart of the current diplomatic dialogues and negotiations. And I won't characterize the Secretary's point of view or his approach. I think what he reiterated after this call, I think, speaks for itself, that he reiterated President Trump's calls for constructive, good faith dialogue as the only way to end the war. So that was repeated in that call, and I think that speaks to the Secretary's position. All right, yes, sir, go ahead.
May I just follow up on that? Can this good faith dialogue continue alongside military offensive?
You've got to repeat that first part.
Can this good faith dialogue this continue alongside military offensive?
Well, obviously, we're going to find that out. Again, we're judging, and I think the president has judged Putin based on the nature of what was clearly extremely frustrating to him regarding the killing of civilians while talks are going on for a ceasefire. And that's a judgment that's going to come from the leaders of this country, the leaders, frankly, of the free world, of whether or not that's possible. And we're going to have to take that moment by moment in this case, I think.
Are you guys involved into the second part of Istanbul talks? Are you part of it?
I'm not going to go into that. I have nothing to preview for you on that. So yes, sir, go ahead.
On Iran, the president yesterday said that the deal with Iran could happen in the next couple of weeks. The Iranian foreign minister today on X said that media are speculating about an imminent agreement, but he's not sure we are there yet. Any reaction to what he said?
Well, people are speculating because maybe somebody goes on radio and starts to speculate and starts to talk and starts to gossip. We don't do that. We've learned that discussing the details of something as sensitive as peace negotiations or a ceasefire does not help It might be more interesting radio, but that's not how we're operating. It's not how serious agreements benefit. So I'm not going to comment on that. What I do know is that every report after our meetings is that it's that they've gone well, and that progress has been made. Iran is at the table, and progress has been made based on the lines of President Trump, what his lines are, that there will never be a nuclear weapon, that there will not be enrichment, and we make progress every single meeting. And that, unfortunately, in our very strange short day, that is going to be it today. I know there's more, and of course I'll see you soon, and you also know how to reach all of us. All right, thank you, everybody. That really is it. Thank you, appreciate it. Have a great.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We're watching live as the State Department briefing just wrapped up. On the top right is a look over Carowinds as we track a potential for storms in our area. And then below that, that is a live look outside of the New York City Federal Courthouse as the Sean Diddy Combs trial continues. All right, so we want to come back home. We want to get to a story that we were following yesterday. WCNC Charlotte's Walker Lawson was following. So right now in Huntersville, there's a master plan in development for a vacant farm that was acquired by Mecklenburg County. Before it's developed, leaders are seeking input from the public. WCNC Charlotte's Walker Lawson found out the county says it's looking to make this space that represent what the community actually wants and likes. So Walker got a chance to speak with the county along with Ann Rust, who runs Woodring Farm. Let's take a listen in to both of those interviews.
Agriculture.
I think it's a great idea. A lot of the agricultural areas around here are just going away, and it's sad to see what all's happening to this area.
When you look at growth and development here, do you feel like this area is exploding?
Oh, most definitely. I can't even remember what the population used to be as compared to what it is now, but exploding is probably not exaggeration, but I don't know the word I'm trying to think of, but understatement.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And you can keep doing what you're doing, ask away. But were you ever aware of the potential master plans for that property?
Can you do them? Up there?
Yeah.
I think at one time we heard it was supposed to be for veterans, a working farm for veterans. And from what I understand, that is no longer the case.
Yeah, it looks like now they're going to make it educational, also have some educational resources, access for farmers to go there. You know, they're going to keep it agriculture. They're going to have two final plans they're going to let the community basically vote on in the coming weeks. But
are they going to go with our vote?
Yeah, I hope so. They're talking about one of the biggest things is also with this change is trying to connect younger farmers with farmers that are experienced, and they're hoping that this property will help bring a younger generation to bridge that gap, because I think they said there's around 10,000 acres still of farmland in the county, about 165 active farmers.
Okay.
What do you think about the fact of trying to get younger kids? I know I see some younger kids here, but trying to get the youth into farming.
I think that is a great idea. We have a camp here, a horse camp. I do over the summer, and of course mine's more horse-based. Kelly Beard, who lives up over that way, she does a farm camp, and she's got a lot of more animals, farm animals. They have chickens, they have cows, they now have goats on the farm, and she does a lot of the farm type activities with her campers.
And when you look at this is obviously, the road is so busy here now, but development, why do you think it's important to keep this agriculture and more rural feeling alive?
Because I just feel like there's so many kids nowadays that are never exposed to things such as this. They do have farms like the Lazy 5 Ranch and things like that, but to actually be able to come and work at a farm like this, it instills work ethic. Being able to handle horses gives, especially I say little girls, because we have a lot of little girls out here, it gives them a feeling of power. Horses are gentle, but you always need to know how to handle them, and I just think the fact that they can come and do those sorts of things is good for anybody to learn, adults too.
And I'm the Sustainability and Resiliency Manager for Mecklenburg County.
Awesome. So first, walk me back to how this all began with this property. How did it start? How did it come about? And why was it necessary?
Sure. So we as a county actually adopted our first farmland preservation plan in March of 2023. And I say first, it's not really our first, it's going to be our only, I'd say our inaugural iteration. And in March 2023, our Board of County Commissioners passed that, but that plan was informed by a host of feedback we received from farmers across the county. And so that process to get that feedback started roughly at end of 21, early 22. And so we worked with Soil and Water Conservation District to really get.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. That right now you're watching interviews, and this is from the county right now, Mecklenburg County. As right now, Huntersville, a master plan is in development for a vacant farm that was acquired by the county, and they're looking for public input on this development. All right, we want to shift away from that, and you can catch the story. You can watch the story right now on our website, WCNC.com, and on our mobile app. Let's shift now to a live event that's happening, a live press conference. This is out of Ohio. Let me give you a backstory. So there is a press conference with Mifflin Township, Ohio officials, after 2 officers were shot last night during a traffic stop. Let's take a listen in.
Resolve and courage. I want to thank the Columbus Division of Police, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Clinton Township, Blendon Township Police Departments, Minerva Park, and Gahanna, just to name a few, all responded. I also want to give a heartfelt thank you to Mifflin Township Medic 132 and Columbus Medic 16. Their quick response and diligent efforts no doubt saved the life of my officer, so I want to thank them for that. I want to thank our state and federal agencies for their unwavering support. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is providing critical resources. We are grateful for their expertise. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office Detective Bureau is handling the investigation. They are diligently working it, and you can't ask for a better group of detectives to work a case. I want to personally thank the Fraternal Order of Police and their steadfast support of our officers, my department, and the law enforcement community as a whole. We will not rest until this individual responsible for this act is apprehended and brought to justice. We are fully committed to working with our law enforcement partners around the clock to ensure that happens. To the residents of Mifflin Township, I know this incident is unsettling, but please know your police department remains operational and committed to your safety. The Sheriff's Office has graciously agreed to place extra deputies in Mifflin Township, and Clinton Township has graciously offered to start running 2-man cars and to cover calls in Mifflin Township as well. It really is a brotherhood in the law enforcement community. Everyone has come together. We ask for your continued support, vigilance, and prayers for our officers. I'd like to introduce FOP President Brian Steele. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Brian Steele, President, Capital City Lodge 9. It's been a long night for all of us, for your elected officials, your police leaders. It's been a long night for the men and women of the Sheriff's Office, Columbus Police, Mifflin, Clinton, all the surrounding agencies. And not only did they have a long night, they're coming right back today, and they're doing it again. My priorities here are simple. I'm here to support the sheriff any way the FOP can. Trust, the confidence and trust in the sheriff is overwhelming, as well as chief. Anything they need, we are here for them. My priorities are simple. I want to ensure that these officers recover and recover fast, and anything them and their family needs. I want to ensure that this individual is apprehended and brought to justice, and when the dust settles, the third thing we're going to do to FOP is find out why was this violent offender back on our streets. All indication is the violent offender should have been incarcerated. It's almost deja vu. This isn't the first time we've stood in front of you. It's a repeated, recidivative pattern, and we have to work together to stop it. With that, I will turn it over to Chief Minor.
Thank you, President. You know, Sheriff State, I want to thank you guys for covering this. It's important that when these kind of things happen, that you guys give this the due diligence and the attention that it deserves. You know, 2 officers were shot last night, doing what they were sworn to do, just doing their job. And so thank you for covering this. I want to thank the sheriff also for his continued support to me and my division as we tackle these kinds of situations. It's a tough day for Mifflin Township and their community. You know, these officers put themselves in harm's way trying to protect the community there in Mifflin Township, and then we have things like this that happen. You know, the officers of the state are still in the hospital recovering, and we're confident that they're going to get the best medical care that there is here in Central Ohio, and so we'll continue to pray for their recovery. As you guys know, last night about 6:45 there was a traffic stop that occurred in Mifflin Township Police Department about 6:45 p.m. The initial stop involved one of the officers. He was joined shortly thereafter by a second officer, and then a call went out about 6:49 p.m. of shots fired. So this thing materialized pretty quickly. What appeared to be an innocuous traffic stop quickly turned into a very violent situation, and you know, these officers had really seconds to respond. And I mean, I can't say how brave they were in that situation and how they responded. As mentioned here, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office is leading this investigation. We have a really close working relationship with Mifflin Township, so my detectives are very familiar with Mifflin Township and their personnel and how they do business, and so I think we are the most appropriate agency to handle this. However, you know, I responded there last night, and I don't know that I've ever seen more officers on one scene in my entire 34-year career. It was amazing. It was great that all these different agencies came together for one common goal, and that was to take care of these officers and find whoever was responsible for this. BCI is involved in this. BCI is a close friend, or partner with us in terms of these investigations. They are handling the evidence, the crime scene, and so forth. And so, when I get done here, you're likely to have questions about shots fired and all kinds of stuff. I'm not in a position to answer many of those, or maybe some of them I can, but some of them I won't be able to because the labs and things are not done, and so that evidence is still being analyzed by BCI, and I wouldn't want to say something that wasn't accurate. And so BCI will continue to work with us as we interview witnesses and evidence and so forth. As I mentioned, the traffic stop took place. Just to set the stage, there was one officer on scene joined by a second officer, and then quickly shots were fired. So what we're going to do is, under this request for body-worn camera and some footage of the situation out there, and so what we've done is we've extracted some segments of some of the video that we have. It's not all the video, but it's in my eyes, it's enough to show you exactly what happened out there and the danger that these officers face and how quickly this thing escalated. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play the video. I'll have a couple remarks, and then what we'll do is we'll open it up to questions, as I imagine you will. And so these are two videos of the body-worn camera. So it's the officer on the driver's side of the vehicle, who is the initial officer that conducted the stop. A body-worn camera from the passenger, or I'm sorry, the other officer who approached from the passenger side. The suspect will bail out of the passenger side of the vehicle, and there'll be a short foot chase before shots ring out. There's another video where you'll see this Mr. Dixon stop and and exchange gunfire. Well, not exchange gun, I'm sorry, fire at the officers. And so we'll play the video. I'll have a couple comments about asking for the public's help, and then we'll open it up for questions that undoubtedly you will have. So with that, go ahead and play the video. Okay, and so what you just saw, the first video was the officer approached on the passenger side. He's the one that joined into the traffic stop. Shortly, as soon as he basically walks up to the passenger side, the passenger in the vehicle bails out. There's a foot chase, and then you see the shots fired there. The reason I cut it off here is it gets pretty graphic. This is an officer that shot multiple times, but he stays in the fight. The second one there, you see the officer approach from the driver's side. Again, pretty graphic. He takes fire as well. He retreats to cover, but he's able to maintain composure, give commands as medics arrived. This guy's, he's amazing. He's deferring medical treatment away from himself and into his partner because he knows his partner is hurt worse than he is. But again, is giving commands, telling direction of travel, and all kind of stuff. So 2 warriors here. And then the last one, of course, you see the guy who bails out clearly firing at the officers, trying to kill him. And so that's why last night we made the decision to charge this guy with felonious assault and attempted murder, because that's exactly what he did. And so once he's apprehended, this case will play itself out in court, and hopefully justice will be served on these 2 individuals. Before I take questions, we're asking for everyone in the community to stay vigilant, as the sheriff mentioned. We still got a guy that's presumably armed and dangerous. He clearly has no regard for law enforcement or anybody else in the community. So is he a risk? He absolutely is. And so be vigilant. To Mr. Dixon, I mean, we hope he turns himself in before someone else gets hurt, because we got the help of our office in Mifflin, Clinton Townships. Columbus PD was out there, Ohio BCI, the Marshal Services involved, the FBI is contacted. They're all in terms of apprehending this individual, and so there's no rock that you're going to hide under, Mr. Dixon. We got eyes and ears out there, and so we're going to bring him to justice. And we ask the public that if you saw anything, you seen something, say something. You ran through neighborhoods and got away. We think there's more information still out there, so we're encouraging people to call in, help us get this bum off the street. What I also want to, before I take any questions, is I want to thank Central Ohio Crime Stoppers and also the Fraternal Order of Police that very quickly last night there was some discussion had, and together they were able to more than willing to pony up a $10,000 reward. So not only can we get a bad guy off the street, but you know what? You make a little money doing it too. So we ask people to call in. Let's get this bum off the street here. And so with that, undoubtedly you probably have questions, and so I'll open up to any questions that maybe I can answer for one of these gentlemen.
Do you believe he's still in the area?
He's got family and friends in the area. We have, I mentioned all the resources still out scouring checking relatives, associates, girlfriends, you name it. To answer the question, it could be anywhere. The warrants have been entered nationwide, so wherever he goes, we'll go there after him. So we're not going to stop until we get him in custody. I'm confident we'll do that. We have some amazing law enforcement professionals all together, operating on the same page for the same common goals, and they get this guy off the street. So, is he in the same area? I don't know. I guess we'll find out, but ask the public to please call in and give us any information. I don't care how innocuous you think it is. It may be the missing piece to the puzzle that tells us exactly where he's at. But I'm hopeful and confident in a short period of time we'll bring him into custody.
How many guns were recovered?
I'm sorry?
What was the traffic stop for? Are you saying?
Well, and so as you can imagine, these officers are injured, and so they're not really in a position to answer a lot of detailed questions, and so we wouldn't want to interview them while they're, one under sedation and the other one having medical care. And so when it's appropriate medically, we'll interview those officers. So what happens when there's a traffic stop? You radio the dispatcher, and you give the code for a traffic stop. But not necessarily indicate whatever the infraction was. And that's just common. And so it was a regular traffic stop that escalated pretty quickly. There was some contraband located in the vehicle. Was that why he ran? I don't know. I guess we'll have the option or the opportunity to interview the suspect once he's brought into custody. I don't want to get into all of it because the investigation is continuing, sorting things out from there. Again, remember I told you it's under investigation. I got BCI and all that kind of stuff, so we got work to do too.
I think he was part of the diversion program for previous offenses. Do you know if he was in touch with his probation officer? Have you guys spoken with him?
Yeah, I don't want to comment on any of that because my role is to conduct an investigation. It's not to look back in terms of what should have been done in the past. President Steele may have some comments on that, and he may have information that I don't necessarily know while I'm standing here at the podium. Ryan, you want?
I can tell you those requests have been put out today. We're asking no stone is going to be unturned to. We're going to want to find out every single person that was involved in that decision, including the prosecutor's office, because we believe they also agreed to this joint resolution to give community control. So again, and I appreciate that that's not something for the sheriff's office to talk about. They are here, saw it for the investigation. So once we have more on that, we'll definitely pass it on to you.
The driver of the vehicle is cooperating with the investigation?
I'll turn that back over to investigators.
He stayed at the scene. Yes, as much as possible. Yeah, he did not flee, so he was there, taken in custody pretty quickly. We were able to conduct interviews not only with him but other people that were in the area. So a lot of interviews were conducted. We got a lot of help out of the community last night, but I think there's more out there, and we would encourage the community to call in. Again, I don't care how small it is. Call it in, even if you think, oh, it won't help. No, call it in. Let us decide on that. And so, yeah, we've got a lot of good help so far. So, thank you.
Chief, how many guns were recovered, and do you believe he still has more guns?
It does appear as though we believe the gun that was used was recovered after the foot chase. It does not mean that he doesn't have another gun on him. And here, it's not hard to get a gun on the street. He's got a lengthy criminal record, as it's been disclosed here today. And so even although laws may prohibit him, these guns they buy them off the street, off their friends or whatever. I mean, it's just how it works. And so, yeah, I think he should be treated as armed and dangerous. It should be presumed that he has another gun. That's how this should be treated. He has another gun, and he is a danger to anybody that interacts with him.
Did that gun have a Glock switch?
I don't want to get into the particulars of that. BCI has not got a chance to analyze the gun. They'll go through the ballistics, any casings that were recovered, rounds from surgeries, all that kind of stuff to compare all that evidence to determine how many shots and all that kind of stuff. That has not been completed. And so I don't want to get too deep into all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't want to say something that turns out to not to be true later. That's all.
How did you know each other?
The driver and the passenger, I assume? They were associates. They knew each other. How long, I don't know, but they definitely knew each other. And so, again, we'll continue to vet out what that relationship was, and if there's a relationship after today. While some people were cooperative today, they may not be later, and we'll have to do it when the time comes.
At this point, do you believe anyone is helping him? And if so, what would you say to anyone who might be helping him stay on the loose?
I would just be surmising, but yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. Yeah, I don't think he evaded, a couple hundred officers out there last night by himself. I think he had some help, and again, we'll investigate that. And if later determined that it's appropriate to charge people who aided his escape or the obstruction to his capture, we'll absolutely be looking to charge people. We're looking for people to turn this guy in because he's a danger, not help him get away.
Chief Briggs, this isn't the first time you guys have had an officer injured. What has this been for your small department?
It's detrimental. I mean, we are a small department. We're already understaffed. Losing 2 officers takes out 40% of my officers. I have to lean heavily on the sheriff's office. I have been for the last several months, covering gaps in service, not being able to backfill vacations. And now these 2 officers are going to be off for quite some time. Hopefully they can return when they heal. So it's definitely hard. We do have the support of, like I said, the surrounding agencies, the sheriff's office, the Clinton Township Police Department, Minerva Park, Linden Township. They all come down to assist. We'll just take it day by day, and we'll provide the services we can with what we have.
But not just from a staffing level, emotionally, mentally. How are you and your officers doing?
It's a small department, so our building, if you've ever been by it, it's not very big. My office sits right in the middle of all the officers' desks, and my door's always open. We're like a family. I'm kind of like Dad. It's a love-hate relationship. I have to yell at them and discipline them sometimes, but most of the time it's family. We eat lunch together. We know each other's families. We know each other's children.
Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. Colin Mayfield here in the Impact studio on WCNC Plus. Live Impact News strolling into the 3 o'clock hour all the way to 4. We'll hand things over to Jane Monreal and Nick Sturdivant at that time. But we want to go and take the Sacramento County presser full listen in on this, on the fentanyl crackdown. We have reported on fentanyl, obviously, here in the North Carolina area, in the state itself, and in Charlotte, and how bad it's gotten. So we'll learn a little bit more from officials here in California about what they're dealing with.
States combined. So just to put in perspective how much deadly fentanyl we are taking off the street. And then last February, we announced a joint operation in San Diego County resulting in the felony arrest of a suspect, the seizure of 720,000 fentanyl pills. Last January, we arrested 3 drug traffickers alleged to be responsible for bringing 30,000 fentanyl pills across the Mexico and California border. And again, make no mistake, these seizures make Sacramento safer. There's no telling how many lives would be tragically cut short, how many families would have been devastated had these drugs been distributed. But by seizing them, we prevented that. And while we've had successful efforts, we've got to remain relentless in our life-saving efforts to combat illicit fentanyl, especially because for Americans ages 18 to 45, the leading cause of death is fentanyl overdose. No community, not Sacramento, not anywhere, unfortunately, is immune from this crisis. That is unacceptable, and we are committed to changing that. Rest assured, our work won't stop until the deaths from illicit fentanyl stop. We are committed to the end. Here in Sacramento and across California, we'll continue to work hand in hand with local leaders like Sheriff Cooper and DA Ho, alongside the brave men and women who risk their lives every day, who don the badge and the uniform to protect our families, to hold fentanyl traffickers accountable. As AG, I'll continue to marshal the resources, the expertise, the intelligence of our office to put a stop to these dangerous crimes. And I'd also like to take a moment to thank my team for their life-saving efforts. They don't do it for the recognition, but I want to recognize them. Special Agent in Charge Jason Oliver and Chief Stephen Woolery in particular, thank you for leading our office's efforts. We're proud to work hand in hand with our law enforcement partners across the state and right here in Sacramento County. The fight against fentanyl isn't over, but together we'll continue to make progress. We won't rest until we've turned the tide on this crisis. And again, I want to thank our partners for the opportunity to work together, hand in hand with you, to tackle fentanyl and increase public safety for Californians. And I can turn it back over now to DA Hope. Thank you.
And with that, we turn it over for any questions that you may have. And when you do so, please identify your name and from what media outlet you belong to.
Excuse me. Hi, my name is Ashley Zavala with KCRA 3. I have a couple questions, and first, just to start with the transnational criminals who are involved in this or who you've captured. I mean, has there been any cooperation with the federal government on these potential suspects, again, who are part of this fentanyl crime? Yeah.
So we do work with our federal partners. That's so important. It's been that way for years here in the Sacramento area, Sacramento County. Great working relationship.
Just to be clear, like the people who are accused of the transnational criminal networks, I mean, are you cooperating with the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, to potentially put them through a process that could set them up for deportation?
We cooperate, yes.
Yeah,
and
in
we follow the
that
law, too.
respect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then actually for the Attorney General, the sheriff invoked Proposition 36 earlier in this press conference. Do you think the way that the governor and the legislature may be not funding Prop 36 in the way that I know some folks are upset about, I mean, what do you think about where that situation stands?
A couple things. Let me just start by saying that the partnership that I talked about that I think is so critical to our progress in tackling fentanyl, and it certainly includes our federal partners. We've had the partnership and seek and want the ongoing partnership of our federal partners, particularly with our FAST partnership, our fentanyl abatement and suppression team down in San Diego, right on the border. We've worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've worked with Homeland Security. And we will continue to work with them to tackle fentanyl as it comes across the border, to prevent it from getting into California in the first place, certainly prevent it from coming up to Sacramento whenever we can. When it comes to Proposition 36, the people of the state spoke loud and clear. I think every county, or nearly every county, voted for it, tackling two very important issues that have been a top priority for my office and for the law enforcement departments and agents represented here. Organized retail crime, 1, and fentanyl, 2. The proposition passed as is. It did not have a funding source in it, but obviously, because it passed so overwhelmingly, the people of the state have spoken loud and clear. And so I think getting a full implementation is critical. We're in difficult budget times, so that's a tough issue for the legislature and the governor, but I think the will of the people should be delivered. Of course, Proposition 36 could have had a funding component to it. It didn't, but now that's an issue that certainly can and should be addressed. I was once in the legislature, no more, so that's between the legislature and the governor to determine what that looks like, given there are multiple priorities in these challenging times and a budget that's not as robust as I think most of us would like.
The governor said that for the DAs, the cities and counties that supported it, they should just fund it. I mean, do you agree with that?
I don't know the best way to fund it. If counties and states, counties and local jurisdictions can contribute, perhaps. If the state can get it done, perhaps. If a funding source needs to be created, perhaps. I think everything is on the table for how you implement the will of the people, but I think it should be implemented. The people spoke loud and clear.
And my last question, I promise. You mentioned the fentanyl registry. Is that, and this is for sort of the two of you, is that a statewide effort that you're trying to get going? And Mr. Attorney General, is that something you would support?
So we're trying to come up with innovative ways to really deal with the fentanyl crisis. So you want the interdiction side of it, you want the prosecution side of it, the education side of it. We seized enough fentanyl last year in the state of California to kill every single person on the face of the earth. And so we need to do more. And we need to be innovative and think outside the box. And so I am advocating for a registry so that that the community knows and that the individual who's selling drugs know that there is accountability for it. There is an opportunity for redemption. There always is. But we also need to start with accountability first. And I think the public needs to know if somebody's selling drugs that is killing other people, so that perhaps they can check to see if this person is selling drugs out there that has killed someone. So it always comes down, for me, to a public safety issue. I think we need to have an alert system powered by AI. I think we need to come up with other innovative ideas, such as education, so that people who are selling drugs, that they then understand the full impact of what that meant to a family. What does that mean to Laura Didier, who lost her son? What does that mean to somebody else who's lost their mother, their sister, their, whoever else in their family? So we need to really think outside the box.
You're confirming it's a statewide registry.
It would absolutely have to be statewide because you need to have consistency across the board with the state, in my opinion. And that is really working on a statewide issue.
And is that something you would support?
I'm hearing about it for the first time. So obviously, with great partners like DA Ho and Sheriff Cooper and others who might be in support of something like this, I'd like to talk about how we might be able to move something forward. I like the creativity, I like the innovation, I like the good faith effort to tackle a challenge that we all know is unacceptable. Our fentanyl crisis is unacceptable. And so it's all hands on deck, it's all tools in the toolbox, all resources, approaches, ideas are welcome. Maybe not all will move the needle like we want, but I think having that important thought partnership and process is key. So I look forward to talking to the DA more about his idea.
Other questions? Yes.
Christina with Fox 40. Can you elaborate on how cartel operations are evolving in Sacramento and surrounding counties?
I think actually it's John up here.
John Martin.
John Martin, you want to talk about that, John? Yeah.
John Martin, I'm the Executive Director for the Central Valley, California HIDA, or High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. So we have 12 task forces up and down the Central Valley. We have 2 of them, our Trident team and our Saint team, which you heard talked about today. Those are joint task forces, so they're members of federal, state, and local agents, detectives working together, really on that high-level TCO, or transnational criminal organization or drug trafficking organization. They are constantly working those cases. That's kind of what the HIDA does. And I just want to mention one thing here. So we have many members of our executive board for the HIDA up here today. And what's beautiful about the HIDA program, it's a national grant program, is that it really empowers the area, so the high-intensity drug trafficking area, this region. All the regions are different across the country, but what it does is it takes the leaders here, they develop a strategy. They see that there's an issue, like the fentanyl crisis. They develop a strategy, kind of three-pronged in this respect, and you heard DA Ho talk about it, where we have these 2 high-level task forces that are really going after these drug trafficking organizations in the region. Then they saw a need and created an interdiction task force that's going after highway interdiction, parcel interdiction, and airport interdiction. So that's a big piece of it. And then we have a couple of teams here that are going after those individuals that are peddling the death. So they're investigating the fentanyl overdoses. So that's really a 3-pronged attack, and that's part of that HIDA program. And we're just fortunate to have these leaders behind me that really recognize that and develop that strategy. So, but for that long answer to a short question, yes, we have 2 very good teams here, that federal, state, local detectives and agents working together to tackle that problem.
Can I add one piece to that as well? On the prosecution side, a number of our offices have cross-designated local prosecutors as assistant United States attorneys embedded in task forces to try and tackle and break down the barriers between the federal government and local agencies to try and attack on that larger level, on the cartel level, as well as sort of the local dealer level. So that's kind of an additional sort of unique aspect to some of the things that everyone behind me is doing here.
Why do we need to have collaboration between our local, state, and federal partners? Because the cartel, they have their tentacles throughout California, without a doubt. They have their tentacles throughout California distributing drugs, engaging in human trafficking, gang warfare as well. And so we need to have this collaboration to combat it at every single level, and we do. And that's reflected by the people that are up here. Devin?
Devin Truby, ABC 10. Sacramento and Placer County have had much success focusing on dealers and justice, but with so much product being seized, is there concern that Sacramento or Placer County's role in the supply chain might have changed from rather a destination to drop off product to potentially concerns for groups making footholds in our local communities for packaging or redistributing things that our local residents are concerned about?
I think we're under no illusion. We have a lot of seizures, and we do a great job at it, but just think about how much more is getting through, and that's really the issue, and more.
All right, we're going to dump out of this and take you somewhere else in just a second. Obviously talking about a task force there in Sacramento County, something that we've heard about all across the nation, a makeup of different agencies, officers from federal, state, I'm sure even local as well, to try and attack the fentanyl crisis that's ongoing in Sacramento, California. So we've seen the same thing here in North Carolina and around Charlotte as well, these teams of task force officers. So there's obviously different ones, Fugitive Task Force, which we saw last year during the deadly ambush here in Charlotte. But interesting to learn the makeup of these agencies, who's on them, and really what they're trying to attack and help certain communities with. So we'll leave that and go to the Texas Senate as leaders there are discussing homestead exemption increases. This is a big discussion, especially with how much land is in Texas, and people are buying land a lot right now in Texas, it seems. So Senate Bill 4 will increase the homestead exemption to $40,000, it seems like, and there's another Senate bill that will increase the exemption to $200,000 for Texans over 65, those with disabilities. This is all about obviously generating the right revenue for the state of Texas. So they're discussing both of these bills that have, seems like, big impacts on a lot of individuals that own land in Texas.
First, property tax relief. You've heard bring home the bacon. Well, we're bringing home the bacon and some property tax relief. Thank you so much to Senator Bettencourt and to our Lieutenant Governor for your steadfast leadership and making this a priority from day one.
Thank you. I want to thank also my committee, which local government committee has worked long and hard on this. I've got several members that are current members as well as former members, Angela Paxton. I see Senator Eckhart. I see my Vice Chair, Mays Middleton. I'm going to ask Senator Royce West to come up and make a few comments. And then I'll have Senator Colcourse and Senator Menendez speak, as well as anyone else that wants to. Senator West.
This is a great day for Texas. For those of you to say that Democrats and Republicans can't work together, we can work together. The fact is when we have common interests and when everyone is on board up front and has input into the decision-making process, then we can work together and come up with these type of products. Every Texan will benefit from this. Black, white, brown, purple, pink will benefit from this. And this is a good template for us going forward as it relates to other things that we can, in fact, do together as members of the state Senate led by our leader, Dan Patrick. And so, as we leave here this session, hopefully the media will say that we got it right, we worked together, everyone had input into the process, and when we have input into the process, we end up with great results session after session, record property tax relief.
Thank you, Senator West. And I knew we were on the right track on this exemption when Senator West invited me on a town hall meeting. Exactly. And when they found out how much the exemption was up 40%, but wait, when they found out, Senator Menendez, that the over 65 exemption would get them to 200,000, it was quite euphoria, especially for a Republican visiting a Democrat's town hall meeting. But it goes to Senator Alvarado's comment about this isn't red or it's not blue, it's green. With that, I've got want to recognize Senator Nichols, who doesn't like to speak, but he is the ranking member on the local government committee. And with that, I'd like to have Senator Colcourse come up, and then Senator Menendez, and then Senator Paxton. Go ahead. Lois, here we go.
I just want to say it is truly a great day. One of the goals is an American dream is to own your own home, to not be a renter. And with these homestead exemptions, this is what the goal is, and it will accomplish that. And when we look at our seniors, it is, like Governor Patrick said, we don't want to tax them out of their homes. We're giving them that break to think about our seniors who, on the average now, won't pay any money for property taxes when it comes to their schools. What a historic day. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor. Governor, you have been after this long before you were even in office. Yes. You've come to this building, and you brought a busload of people here to say that.
Remember, I was on the other bus.
You were on the other bus, and I want to thank Uncle Paul. I finally call him Pablo for his steadfast dedication in this regard. Senator West, you're right. Senator Alvarado, you're right. This is not blue, this is not red, it is green, and that means more money in the pocket of our people and allowing them to have their homes, to live their lives, and to raise their children. Finally, I have to reemphasize something that the Lieutenant Governor said. 25% of every dollar in this budget is dedicated to property tax relief. And I will tell you, as Senator Bittencourt says, wait, there's more. This legislature, both with the House and the Senate, continues to be dedicated to lowering property taxes, and this is a commitment to that. So we're super excited about this. Thank you, House members, for working with us and believing in this. And again, the American dream is to own your own home and to be able to live there and to live your life well into your senior years, and that's what this tax package does. Thank y'all.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon by now. Look, folks, when I first ran for office, I remember watching my elderly father count the number of pills in his hands, and he would say, son, you know that one, I'm saving $10 because I'm not going to take that one today. And I'm like, Dad, why not? He says, well, I feel good, and I don't need to. I'm going to save the money. I'm like, no, Dad, you feel good because you took it yesterday. So the problem where I'm trying to illustrate is that our senior citizens at times are making choices between medicine, food. You don't know the emails we've had sometimes with people saying they can't take their grandchildren out for an ice cream cone. The Texas Silver Hill legislature has told us that about 80% of all seniors in Texas only have around $36,000 of disposable income. Think about that, $36,000. So every single dollar that we save them is another dollar they can take their children, their grandchildren out for an ice cream cone, go on a trip, make sure they take their medicines, do all the things they need to do to have a good life. And that's what's beautiful about this event, about this press conference coming together. That's the reason I ran, and that's the reason I prefer to serve in the Texas legislature, because we've always tried to work together to serve all Texans. Each of us each senator here represents almost 1 million people. And all 1 million people who live in my district, they're not all Democrats. They're not all Republicans. Some of them, unfortunately, don't even vote. But hopefully this will help a majority of them. And that's why we're here, to solve problems. And so I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor. I want to thank Chairman Bettencourt, because this is going to have an impact. This will have a very real impact on their lives. And you've heard all of the stats. We don't need to belabor those. Just, it's a good day to end a session that in some ways has been difficult. But at the end of the day, if we end this on a high note where we're going to save everyday Texans money so they can have a better life, that's a good thing. And so thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Paxton.
Thank you. Well, I came into the Texas Senate 4 sessions ago. This is my 4th session. And my first experience, the first committee hearing I ever attended in my whole life was vice chairing the property tax committee. Thank you for assigning me to that, Lieutenant Governor. And of course, the big bill was the property tax bill. We built a committee around it. And so because you were laying out the bill, that meant that I was chairing the committee. So the first time I ever went to a committee hearing ever in my whole life, I chaired it. And thanks for that. I was glad to have a nice script. But, you know, every session we have been here, we have done historic, not just big things, historic things to create property tax relief for Texans. There is nothing that affects every Texan like property tax relief. And I agree, Senator West, red, black, white, green, whatever. It doesn't matter. It affects every Texan. And what we are doing, you know, last session, it was historic property tax exemption, right? Who would think that we could do another historic property tax exemption this big in such a short period of time? And I'm so thankful we live in the state of Texas. This is helping our older Texans. But you know, I've got grown kids now that are starting their families. This is also helping those families, the young families who want to have the American dream of owning their own home. I've got 2 kids out in California. You think they're going to ever buy a home out there? Probably not. They'll be lifelong renters. But my kids in Texas, because of things like this, they can own a home. And so I am so thankful and excited about what this does for our economy, what that does for the quality of life, and what it does for every single family in Texas. So thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for your leadership. Paul, thank you for your leadership of collaboration. It's one of the things that really does mark your style of leadership, and we see the results of it here today. So thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak, make a comment? Senator Campbell.
You're right. It has been all said, except, and we did our work here, but you all have work to do out there. You've got to get to the polls and vote in this November election for the constitutional amendment that we'll have to pass for our home exemption, okay? So you've got work ahead of you. We finished ours, and now it's up to you.
I'd like to call Senator Hancock up because we've been at this a very long time. Senator Perry, I think you remember we went to Arlington, Texas in 2017, had what was quite a hearing with 500 people there because at the time, a lot of local governments hadn't figured out that if you didn't lower the tax rate, they thought that was a great event, except that when appraisals kept going up, they didn't want to recognize it. But Senator Hancock did, and he is a long-term school board member. He has a special message to give.
Obviously, the importance of this, and the Lieutenant Governor's driven this from day one. In fact, he's driven it from day negative.
Negative 40.
Yeah, you know, negative 1,200.
Negative 22 years.
And as we lower property taxes, we want those for our constituents. We know the burden they feel in their homes, especially our senior citizens, and we focused in that area. And so that is obviously a key. But I was sharing with the Lieutenant Governor, the thing that we're missing out on is the needs for those revenues aren't going away. Those revenues, for the most part, go into our educational system. In order to fully fund education system, as we lower property taxes, the state's investment in our local schools, in the local school districts, and those students and those children, the state has to offset that. So as we lower property taxes, the state's investment in our education system offsets those revenues. The need for those revenues doesn't disappear. The need for those revenues goes. And so we've not only have we fully funded through that exchange where local revenues stay local, state revenues increase to offset the needs that are out there, but on top of that, we've done so much more this session for education. So I didn't want us to get away with purely talking about what we're doing for homeowners and property taxes, because what's happening is the percentage that you see the state investing on education, as that local investment drops, the state's investment has increased significantly each and every time we buy down property taxes. And so as a 13-year school board member, and everyone in here understands, we don't want to just take those monies out of education. We're going to replace them and fully fund that gap with state dollars. Thank you.
And I have one more slide to show you if we can go to that last one. It makes this point correctly. The state share of education is now well north of 50% again. because of all the investment Lieutenant Governor and Senator Hancock talked about. This actually is a sampling of counties that shows where this property tax relief that we've all already worked on. And look, you can tell, I've got so many people that have specific knowledge of individual portions of this bill. It's fabulous to work with this group. We've come out with unanimous votes on homestead exemptions in 2021, 2023, and now 2025. And it's because all that work had gotten the average over 65 homeowner in the state 45% exempt from ISD taxes, wherever they were. And when you look at some of the counties, Senator Blanco, you'd be happy to know that we've done really good in El Paso, okay, all the way over to Senator Hinojosa in Cameron County. I think he's somewhere, but I'll use the other Hinojosa in Corpus Christi and Natchez County. Right, again, same thing, especially along the valley. But wait, when this passes, we're looking at a well over supermajority of all over 65s, wherever they are in the state, will paying no ISD taxes whatsoever. And they deserve it after paying a lifetime of taxes. And the ones that are still paying, as Lieutenant Governor Patrick said, their bills are going to go down every year as we compress tax rates. So I want to give a shout out to my partner in the House, Morgan Myers. I want to give a shout out to the State Finance Chair, Joan Huffman, because 6.3 pennies of compression is in this bill and these calculations. And I'm looking forward to what I think will be a record turnout of the public and have a record percentage of passing. Because over 65s have waited for a long time to feel like that they're getting the maximum relief that's possible. Well, because the leadership of Lieutenant Governor Patrick, he said, we want a $200,000 exemption. We're not taking a penny less. We've got it, and the folks will feel it. Because Senator Zaffirini said it best. When we laid these bills out in the Finance Committee, she said, everybody will see this on their property tax bills in November, and they will. And with that, we'll take questions. Sure, go ahead, Brad.
Called for at least $10 billion in new tax relief.
Right.
In the state of the state. What did you all hit?
Well, we hit above 10. I think the last number was about 10.3. Okay, that includes the business personal property tax relief package. It's not even counting the. We extended the R&D credits. And we didn't even throw that in. So we've hit the governor's number, which was $10 billion, and that's on top of the 22.7 that we spent last time. And as Senator Colcor said, you have to keep reinvesting this money, okay? It's every year you have to pour that money in, because if you don't get the compression. But what this does, when the public votes for these constitutional amendments, and I believe the over 65 one will probably poll nearly 90% this time, that's a commitment that the state makes to those taxpayers. That's a commitment. We make $2.08 million over 65 disabled homeowners. When they vote for the $140,000 exemption, Senator West, that's a commitment we make to 5.7 million homeowners in the state. And that's a commitment that that at least I know, as long as all these senators and lieutenant governor are alive and in office, will never break.
Well, it's in the Constitution, so it can't be taken back.
Yes, sir.
As you mentioned, now 2 sessions in a row with this property tax relief. Obviously, the first one didn't go as far as you guys would have hoped, so you came up with another package. What metrics are going to tell you guys whether or not this round is successful and you have to come back in the 90th legislature and do another tax break?
Well, first off, the last session was widely successful because that particular decrease in the average tax bill was nearly $1,300, okay? And see, that's still there because we're still pouring that money in, okay? Now, these metrics will be helpful. We passed a bill asking the comptroller to take all that data from the county, so we'll be able to measure it. And what's going to happen is when we get this data back after this, what I believe will be a successful election in November, these numbers are going to be off the charts. There's going to be so many people not paying any over 65 ISD tax. And so This is not a what gets measured gets fixed. This is great news because these commitments are, and once they're enshrined in the Constitution, are going to stay there forever. I'm going to make one last comment because this is very important about housing affordability. The Texas Senate knew early on that if you gave people a homestead exemption, it keeps them in their homes. If you crank up the homestead exemption on over 65s and disabled, it lets them stay in their homes when they have the least amount of income in their lifetime. And when we're talking about on top of this, make sure you understand how big this is, okay? For an over 65 homeowner, it's $1,486 of a cut last time. But wait, we had $933. We have cut over 65 exemptions by nearly $2,500. It's an astonishing sum. It is a record property tax cut. There are states in the union that don't have a $10 billion budget, much less a $22 billion budget. So when we make this commitment, people feel it and they see it, and there's going to be people astonished, especially if you're over 65. I'll leave you with this. The last time we had that election, there was a group of seniors that was actually, they went to church in Senator Huffman's district. They actually had a meeting because they were worried, Brad, that their tax bills were wrong because their tax bills were zero. Now, millions of homeowners, once they see this next effect, will think, you know, maybe my ISD tax bill is wrong. But we're going to say, nope, it's right. It's low or zero. Yes?
Hi, Senator Buckhart. So as many of you mentioned, there's $51 billion in the supplementary budget for property tax relief. The state has started the last two sessions with the historic surplus. What is the plan if there is an economic downturn and there's no surplus to meet the obligation of the future surplus?
Well, there's first off there's no budget plan that Chairman Huffman, who's not here today, or this group of senators can't tackle. And I don't try to buy tomorrow's trouble today, but I will tell you that we've looked at the sustainability of these exemptions over time, and there's no doubt in my mind that we can maintain our constitutional obligation for these homestead exemptions.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure, you may.
What that means is, because it's in the Constitution, no matter what the budget is, we're putting homeowners and taxpayers first. They get paid first. That's what it means. Hey, thank you all for coming. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so some interesting things said on this bill here. I'll just run down it again really quickly. There's two Senate bills. Senate Bill 4, which increases the homestead exemption price for certain individuals, reducing how much a home's value can be taxed. School taxes are the largest portion of a property owner's taxes. You've seen other states. North Carolina has some of the similar type of bills and legislation. And then you have Senate Bill 23, which would increase the homestead exemption for older homeowners and those with disabilities from $10,000 to $60,000. So this is all about the economy and economics, allowing folks to obviously have more spending power available to them, and really overall helping the state's economy in and of itself. So some interesting things there. We know right now that the Governor Gretchen Whitmer is speaking. I think we lost that shot, though, so we're going to go. This is how Live Impact News kind of sometimes rolls. Sometimes we lose shots. Sometimes we have them up for quite a while. Other times we end up losing them. So that's the great advantage about Live Impact News, because we can give you something as it happens while it's going on. So a big weekend ahead, and we are asking folks throughout the Charlotte area to stay weather alert on Friday. We're not exactly sure the timing. It has kind of skewed. We do know that the afternoon and evening portions, though, are something that we want to really highlight. So Brad took some time, gave us his vlog for today, and potentially even what he's looking at on Friday. So we'll go to this right now.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. We've got the chance for some strong storms to our south today, but a bigger chance of severe weather for most of the Carolinas going into Friday. So let's get right to it. We're going to show you the wide view first, and we can see the systems that are going to be impacting us over the next 48 hours. Here's the system that will be passing mainly into South Carolina tonight. So South Carolina followers, you're going to have the risk for some strong storms this afternoon and this evening. North Carolina, less of a risk. Friday, this is the system that moves across the entire area, and everybody gets a chance for seeing some severe weather with that system. So let's break down the risk for severe storms. So here's the risk for severe weather today, Thursday the 29th. You can see across Texas, and then in the Carolinas, we'll zoom in on the area that we're most concerned about. It's down here in the low country from the Midlands down to southeast Georgia. There's a low chance up here, but I'll be honest with you, it looks like good old-fashioned storms. Risk of a severe storm there is 5% or less, so not a really big deal. So not overly concerned. Now tomorrow, different story. Look at the risk. We've got a big area of medium. This is what we're going to see. We're going to see a line of storms in the morning over here in Tennessee, marching to the east. So in the afternoon and early evening, we are going to see the risk for some strong and severe storms as that moves in. And then on Saturday, that system pushes off to the north and east, and we see a low risk going up into the Tidewater region. So it really can focusing here on the risk for severe weather on Friday. That's why today we want you to stay weather aware. Let's show you the futurecast, and I'll show you some of the parameters coming together. So we start with today's risk of strong storms. We're dry this morning. We had a few pop-up showers, but you'll see as we go into the afternoon, this is around 2:30. You see the storms moving in. Now, everybody will likely see some rain this evening. I'm going to stop this at 5 o'clock because I think this is the time frame most people will start to really pay attention. You can see some scattered storms in the mountains, but this is the area down here. So from Myrtle Beach to Charleston to Savannah, that's an area I'd watch for a strong storm this evening. But everybody will see at least a few scattered storms. You can see even through 10 or 11 o'clock, those moving through. Now, tomorrow, this is where things get a little bit more widespread and probably a higher risk of severe weather. We'll stop this right around after sunrise. This is about 8:30 in the morning. We'll go to about 10:30. I'm going to stop this around lunchtime. So lunchtime, the speed of the system is the key part. So there's a little wiggle room on the time of arrival. So if we have time for the atmosphere to warm up and warm, humid air to surge in from the south, this line will have a lot more fuel to be strong or severe. So at 12, if it's just entering the mountains, that is not even close to peak heating. Peak heating this time of year is around 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Really late evening, late afternoon, early evening is when we see the worst of it. So this is around 2 o'clock. Storms are moving east, and you notice these storms are getting more vigorous, and there's brighter returns, at least on the reflectivity. I'll stop this around 3 o'clock. A couple things to point out here. Looks like to the south, we definitely have some kind of bowing segment, but even in here, we could have some gusty winds and an isolated supercell. If it stays linear, it's going to be more of a straight line risk. If we see individual cells, then we worry more about a tornado risk and damaging wind. So this is 4 o'clock. You can see there's definitely bowing segments. What I mean by that is you think about a bow and arrow, the shape of a bow is like this, and then the arrow would be pushed through like that. These bowing segments are an indication that you've got strong winds. The arrow is basically the wind pushing them out. And so you know you have strong winds in there. But where they meet up sometimes, like in areas like here, up here, sometimes at the apex of the bow, you can get quick spin up tornadoes. So that's always a possibility. But you see it pushing through by 5 o'clock, and then it becomes really vigorous because this is max heating. Remember, 5 o'clock, as I said, heating of the day. So you see why central North Carolina to the Midlands might end up with the highest risk of severe weather. And this pushes east through the evening. This is 5:50, basically 6 o'clock. And then all the way to 7 o'clock in the evening starts to push off the coast, and we're out of here. Might be a trailing batch of isolated showers and storms. I'm not expecting much out of that. And by the time we get to Saturday morning, everything is gone. So let's look at that tornado parameter. Today, not much. You know, there's not a lot going on. We go into Friday, you see during the day as that system approaches, there's not a lot of STP, or what we call significant tornado parameter. It's not really crazy high. So the tornado risk is not zero, but it's not really high either. I think this is going to be a straight line in hail risk unless the cells become individual. We'll quickly look at the helicity tracks, which show the potential for rotating storms, which mean both hail producers and possibly damaging winds and an isolated tornado. But you see, overall, there's not a ton of helicity tracks. There's a few here in eastern North Carolina on Friday and a couple down in South Carolina. But overall, that's not a ton of them for this kind of setup. You know, if we were more worried about tornadoes, we'd see a lot more of that parameter showing up there. So what we're watching for are two lines of storms, one coming in later this afternoon, the lesser of the two. The one tomorrow, you see it blasting through here in the middle of the afternoon. And because that, on Friday, we want you to stay weather aware and alert, because potentially mid-afternoon, right now the timing does look like noon to 6 p.m. for the Western Carolinas, and probably 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for central and eastern North Carolina. So that'll give you a quick heads up. And of course, stay tuned for updates. Have your phone charged fully. Make sure you have 3 ways to get weather alerts for any warnings or watches that could be issued coming up on Friday.
All right, so obviously Brad will have a more fine-tuned forecast as we get closer to tomorrow, and then from tomorrow onwards, we'll finite those details in the forecast. I won't say we. I'm sure Brad and the team of meteorologists will, as they always do. So again, just be aware. June 1st actually is when hurricane season begins. We're getting close to that as well. And we will have a hurricane special for you in the coming days as well that our team of meteorologists has. You will not want to miss it. It's a new thing that they do every single year. Part of it is all about preparation, but another part, a bigger part, is education and teaching folks what they should know. Obviously, we had Helene just decimate Western North Carolina last year. It was something that I think is on the hearts and minds of a lot of folks as we head into this next season. So, man, what poignant timing at this hour. We have Harvard's commencement, and Harvard has been in the news and the headlines over the last couple of days. And just to update the whole entire situation that the president has, or the issues with both sides. Just recently, actually today, a judge extending the order blocking the Trump administration from revoking Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. That's the latest in all of this. Obviously, there's been discussions about federal funds being taken away, hundreds of millions of dollars. Harvard has obviously gone back and forth with the administration, but that's the latest from a judge that would give this temporary restraining order blocking the Trump administration in this preliminary injunction. So we'll go to the commencement, though, as it is happening. And again, we're about 16 minutes or so from the top of the 4 o'clock with Jane Monreal and Nick Sturdivant, and we will take you to them once the show starts. We'll go to Harvard's commencement now.
Thank you. Welcome, family and friends, champions and supporters. Welcome, guests from down the street, across the country, and around the world. And welcome, members of the class of 2025. Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be. I see you this morning not as groups of graduates separated by school, but as one Harvard, a community bound by the shared sense, the shared cause of seeking knowledge, of acquiring wisdom, and of serving society. A community composed of remarkable individuals who take their chances rather than rest on their laurels. We gather today to acknowledge your achievements and to celebrate your excellence. Here, among beloved colleagues and mentors, and distinguished and dedicated faculty and staff, you have learned to consider curiosity a state in which to live, open always to the ever-present possibility of personal growth. I implore you to hold fast to that lesson after your degrees are conferred today. The world as it is tempts us with the lure of what one might generously call comfortable thinking, a habit of mind that readily convinces us of the merits of our own assumptions, the veracity of our own arguments, and the soundness of our own opinions, positions, and perspectives. So committed to our beliefs that we seek information that confirms them as we discredit evidence that refutes them. Though many would be loath to admit it, absolute certainty and willful ignorance are two sides of the same coin, a coin with no value, but costs beyond measure. False conviction saps true potential. Focused on satisfying a deep desire to be right, we can willingly lose that which is so often gained from being wrong. Humility, empathy, generosity, insight, squandering opportunities to expand our thinking and to change our minds in the process. My hope for you, members of the class of 2025, is that you stay comfortable being uncomfortable, starting with the folding chairs on which you sit right now. Ambition eschews comfort. If, in some near or distant future, you find yourself feeling as if you have it all figured out, as if you know enough to kick up your feet and lean back in your seat, recall this day and your chairs, and just how much you have to gain from living your life in a state of curiosity and welcoming ideas, both familiar and unfamiliar, with your arms outstretched and your minds open. You are the hope of this institution embodied, living proof that our mission changes not only the lives of individuals, but also the trajectories of the communities that you will join, serve, and lead. May you carry the best of what Harvard is and does into the world that awaits you. May you chart a path for others to follow as you choose your own. And may your many destinations bring you joy, satisfaction, and peace. Your journey will not always be clear, and it will surely be full of unexpected turns. But fortified by openness and curiosity, by what you have learned here, and by the many connections you have made and will make, you will bring honor to yourself, your family, and your alma mater. Thank you, and congratulations.
Latin salutatory, de hereditatibus peregrinus. Candidate for the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Comparative Study of Religion and in Classics, Aidan Robert Scully.
Praeses Garber, aestimatissimi decani, sapientissimi professores, honestissimi hospites, amici, familiae, et carissimi condiscipuli, salvete omnes! Honor mihi maxim.
All right. This guy, he is going to probably be speaking for a little bit, and we want to pull out of this right now as we heard, obviously, President Garber speak. We do want to go back to Mackinac Island, where Governor Gretchen Whitmer is speaking, giving the keynote address at the Mackinac Policy Conference. She's outlining her approach, apparently, to leadership and trying to bring people together. And she's highlighting a number of things, including some of the hard things that apparently she's done to lay out her priorities for the year ahead and for Michigan as well. So we'll go to this now.
But you are incredibly special. We wish you nothing but the very best in all of your pursuits going forward. And we expect nothing but the same success that you generated for all of us here. God bless you. My only regret is that I'm not there. D. Archie, I love you. Boys, I love you. But Tammy, you made it the most special. God bless.
Awesome.
That was nice. Good boy. Oh, you and Dan Campbell. So, on behalf of the current and past Board of Directors of the Chamber and all of the Mackinac Policy Conference chairs, we know that Tammy is our go-to, our right arm with sage advice. I would text or call Tammy at any hour with a problem as they arose, and she said, I got you. And she did. Somehow she found a solution. But let me tell you who Tammy is at the core. We've talked a lot about the progress of the city of Detroit. But do you guys remember a Time magazine article in 2009 that was entitled The Remains of Detroit? Well, Tammy wrote an op-ed that challenged us, and she said, we cannot change the conversation around the world about Detroit until we change the conversation amongst ourselves. And boy, was she right. Forgot about that.
Well, Tammy,
I didn't forget. I forgot.
here we are in the midst of a transformational revitalization, and you were a key part of that.
Thank you, Suzanne.
So thank you so much, and we can't wait for your next chapter.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
So I will obviously have the opportunity, along with the rest of the Detroit Regional Chamber team, to say our what we, how much we love Tammy and kind of send her off in style over the next several months. So I'm going to say my big comments for those later events. I'm going to except
you just
for
don't
one
want to
thing.
cry, Sandy.
Right.
Except for one thing. You all see Tammy in this very, very public role. What you don't see is how Tammy, for 20 years, has been an incredible mentor to the younger staff at the Chamber. And so many of those younger staff 20 years ago are now today's executive leaders, not just in our organization, but around the state and, frankly, around the country. So, Tammy, on behalf of all of us here, everyone raise your glasses. A toast.
Oh my God.
To our friend, to our leader, Tammy Carnwright. We love you.
Love you.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers, 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 cheers.
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 G. All right. Now, Tammy, now that we've got you a little drunk, time for you to take the stage.
It takes more than a sip of champagne.
Yeah. Dennis has something in the back for you.
Well, first of all, some of the most special people around me. When I came here 20 years ago, it was 1 year later, Tricia arrived on the scene. And we were introduced right away. She was coming in from Lansing, and we've been great friends since then. So I love you. The governor, working with you and your team for the last several years has been just tremendous for me. Your team is very vibrant, very committed, very dedicated, but loves working as a team with us. And I'll miss them. I will miss them.
We'll still be here, and you're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. Not yet. Susie, because I don't want to get emotional. Suzanne, you're right. I always did try to take care of
board chairs, conference chairs. I always said the conference was the orientation for the board chair, right, Sandy? We always say, because they do more work.
We start them out at the hard job.
Yeah, that's right. But working with Suzanne was such a pleasure because this woman's so intelligent. You don't understand the national exposure of this woman and what she's accomplished in a man's world. So much that when I had the opportunity to work from her, she didn't realize she was mentoring me too. So I love her. Dee, what can I say? So this has been probably one of my best friends now for 19 years. I think it was 1 year after I think I came. And just been through so much. You saw the crew up there on the video. I miss those guys. I haven't seen them in a while. Been through ups and downs, and he knows them all. And, celebrating his family. I love his family. Trudy, Dennis, the boys. This is a fabulous family for Detroit. The Archer family is amazing. And we're very, very lucky to have them. But I've always been lucky to have Dennis, D, I only call him D. It's my friend, my really good friend. He's been there through a lot, and he's always there to guide me. And he's already said, I'm on board for T 2.0. So I guess, thank you, buddy. Sandy. Sandy gets a lot of accolades for being the CEO of the chamber. But Sandy's much more than that. He really is.